Welcome to the Kaizorian experience. Over here, we're going to be talking about everything African. We're going to be having debates, discussions, entertainment, as well as learning about business, art, history, and everything in between. Cultural, tribalism, and everything. We're going to be out here debating with some really interesting stuff. So, like the video, share the video, and make sure you subscribe. Make sure you subscribe. Subscribe for the best experience ever. This is the biggest channel on the Afrosphere. So come and join the team, become a Kaizorian, and join the Kaizorian Empire.
Universally exist within myself, within this premise, and I exist within this bluebird in the sky. I'ma fly like the blue in the sky. I'ma fly like bird in the sky. I'ma fly like bluebird in the sky. I'ma fly like bluebird in the sky. I'ma fly like bluebird in the sky. I'ma throw my bluebird in the sky. I'ma soar like bluebird in the sky. I'ma soar like bluebird in the sky. I'ma fly like bluebird in the sky. I'ma fight like bluebird in the sky. I'ma eat like bluebird in the sky. I'ma be like bluebird in the sky. I'ma be bluebird in the sky. I'ma be free, bluebird in the sky. I'ma be free like bluebird in the sky. I'ma be like bluebird in the sky. Back again like the second coming. Strumming my vocal cords like the hummingbird in the sky. Y'all can't deny this. Real rap lyrics, it's like I ain't got no rhyming through the sky limit. What is skin tone, shade of color, but a parallel form of frequency like a ringtone on your phone. Melanin expression, tied up in the universe, feeling like God. Is this really us? Is it serious? Is it really wrong to be diverse? I'm a divergent, immerse myself like an ocean beneath its waves. Be a divergent, born to be different. Indigo child, wild like canary. Born to be a bluebird in the sky, flying high like a bluebird in the sky. I'ma fly high, bluebird in the sky. Yeah, bluebird in the sky. I'ma fly high, bluebird in the sky. I'ma be like bluebird in the sky. I'ma be like bluebird in the sky. Everybody scream bluebird in the sky. I'ma fly high, bluebird in the sky. I'ma be like bluebird in the sky. Yeah, bluebird in the sky. Everybody, bluebird in the sky. I'ma be like bluebird in the sky. I'ma be like bone black, sweet like a berry. Flying high like a canary. Scary with my hoodie on. Hating on my vibe on the street that you'll be feeling my frequency of the song. But I know that I ain't never ever gonna be ever the same. But I know.
Shalom. What's good? Today we're going to be talking about the sanctions, right? New sanctions have been imposed already on Zimbabwe's president and first lady, and of course, subsequently the country. And Zimbabwe has always had sanctions ever since independence because there was several different movements for power, black independence. I'm talking about repatriation of land from the white minority to the black majority, which the Zimbabweans feel was unfairly stolen from, right? So of course, America has always put sanctions on Zimbabwe, apparently because of breaking international rules on racialization, basically racism against the white minority, taking their lands, etc., all of that stuff. So Zimbabwe is an interesting case because Zimbabwe was one of the richest countries in Africa at a certain time, right? Zimbabwe is one of those golden countries that were doing so well. They were doing so well at a certain time until the sanctions came in, and that prevented them from trading. A lot of people have misconceptions of even about the farms, right? The farming that's going on. It's not like, oh, okay, Robert Mugabe gave away the farms to incompetent people, and that was the reason why the farms died. No, that's a very small percentage of the reason. The real reason is because they couldn't sell the produce of the farms easily, and of course, a farm is a business, right? So you have to be able to be allowed to trade with other countries. But when you're in an African nation, right, you have SADC, right, Southern African Economic, whatever community, whatever they call it, and they couldn't have prevented Zimbabwe's demise because they were not powerful enough. So the real reason Zimbabwe, fell from grace is because of the sanctions. Zimbabwe is not like Niger, Mali, or Burkina Faso in the sense that Zimbabwe actually had an economy. Zimbabwe actually had infrastructure, actually had development, has a very highly educated population. The only reason Zimbabwe fell off grace is because of the sanctions. There's nothing else apart from the sanctions and embargoes. What that means is they can't trade easily, they can't buy things easily. There was a recent video, right, about Zimbabwe and corrupt politicians and ministers and businessmen selling gold even to criminals, right? So when you look at it face value, you're gonna think, oh, Zimbabwe is so corrupt. But when you actually look deeper beneath the surface, you realize that Zimbabwe actually has to sell this gold. To sell the gold then allows them to get their euro dollars, right, dollars, so that they can go and purchase things. Zimbabwe right now can't easily just purchase things from other countries. There's so many rules, restrictions, that they have to pay a premium in order for anyone to be willing to take the risk to sell them anything, right? That includes buying new machines and tractors to carry out their farming, right? So sanctions and embargoes are the reason why Zimbabwe fall from grace. Chuku says, Shalom, Kaiser and chat. AA6LY says, I've been contrasting title report. I've seen a contrasting report saying that sanctions have been lifted off Zimbabwe. Yes, I did actually see that too. However, I don't believe that's correct. I believe there's new sanctions. Well, okay, it's multifaceted, right? And that's what we'll do on this video, right? Um, Try to figure out what's actually going on, right? I've seen someone mention that too, but I had to go look and actually find sources from reliable places. As far as we know, there's new sanctions against the president and the first lady. Now, if that sanction is there, right, that does mean there's new sanctions against Zimbabwe. However, if the old sanctions have been lifted, then that's great news for the country. But that's what we're here to do, and that's what we're here to figure out. Zimbabwe. Let me see if I can pull up the articles that you're looking for. But again, we're gonna have to do a proper research. We're not Pan Africans who just go around celebrating things until they have been verified. Okay, so Al Jazeera made a report 3 days ago. BBC also has a report, and then we'll see if the sanctions have been lifted. Right? I'm looking for, I'm looking, but I'm not really seeing anything being lifted, right? I bet you, right? Go down into Google, find me an article from a reputable source that says the sanctions have been lifted. I'm not seeing any. All I'm seeing is new sanctions. However, I have heard reports. I've seen um, Rotondo, is it Rotendo or something, talk about such a thing as being lifted. But I don't believe so, right? That I think that's fake news. But again, if anyone in the chat can find out if Zimbabwe has lifted the sanctions, that would be great. And then send the link in the chat. And if you can't send it in the chat because you're not a mod, then tell me where to find it, or come and throw it up in the back of the StreamYard link, right? So that's also something that you can do. There's a StreamYard link over there. Come up, put it in the private section. Anyways, Al Jazeera, right? This is a reputable source, right? And by reputable, I don't mean they don't have propaganda. I just mean they try to fact check, right? The facts are what's important, not the story behind it. U.S. sanctions Zimbabwe President Emerson Mnangagwa, right, over alleged abuses. U.S. targets President of Zimbabwe, his wife, and top government officials in overhaul of sanctions regime imposed in 2003. Okay, let's try to figure out what they're trying to say about this, right? So the United States has sanctioned Zimbabwe's president, right, his wife, and senior government officials for their alleged involvement in the corruption and human rights abuses, right? So that's what I'm seeing, right? Yes. AA6 Al Jazeera might be anti-African. You're correct, but I'm not reading it for the analysis. I'm just reading it for the facts, what's actually happened, not the analysis of why they think it happened. That part I never really read it. I always build up my own perspective. Zulia says, enjoy my day off before weekend long days in gym, barbecue, lunges. You'll want to see my conference? Yeah, sure. Come up and show us your conference. Chuku, hundreds of Nigerians being kidnapped. Mozambique has jihadists. Haiti is murked. Yeah, Haiti is gone. Bad days for the African globally period of darkness. Yeah, I guess we do need the dark ages, right? Africa never had the dark ages, Europe did. So, and then they emerged from that into the Renaissance, right? So maybe we'll have dark ages now, and we'll reemerge, we'll come back strong and better. The US Treasury Office, Foreign Asset Control, announced the sanctions, right? So the sanctions are real. So there's new sanctions on top Zimbabwean senior officers, right? People in government, targeting 3 companies and 11 people, including the Mgwangwango's Vice President Constantino and retired Brigadier General Walter, whatever his name is, after a review of the sanctions program that had been in place since 2003. So, no, they've not lifted anything. They've just reviewed the sanctions and added more sanctions, right? That's what I'm reading so far, right? I'm not seeing anywhere where they've lifted any sanctions against Zimbabwe, at least not yet. Um, we have all been in the dark ages. Okay, if you say so, if you say so. Okay, let's keep going. All right. Other than the people listed on Monday, Zimbabwe is formerly under U.S. sanctions will see restrictions lifted. Okay, interesting. Okay, so now we have the truth. Okay, so this is interesting. So this is kind of crazy. Okay, Zimbabwe apparently will have the sanctions lifted, right? After the US has reviewed it, right? So, according to Al Jazeera, right? I don't know how true this will be, right? We'll see if America actually removes the sanctions. But this is a key word. Other than the people listed on Monday, right? Meaning the people that we've just read, the brigadier, this guy, the vice president, and some of his colleagues, right? 11 people in total, and 3 Zimbabwean companies. Apparently, the actual country will see restrictions lifted. This would be actually something really great, because it would allow Zimbabwe to actually resume trade as usual rather than being under heavy sanctions. Now, this is great, right? This is good for Africa generally, and of course, great for Zimbabwe, because that's the country that really matters in this whole scenario. So, yeah, I'm pretty happy for this being the case, right? I don't want to be like other Africans, just coming here and telling people, uh, yeah, I don't like just saying things without the actual proof. So that's great. We found the proof according to Al Jazeera, anyways. Kaiser, do you have TB? Lol, do I have TB? Who knows? Who knows? Maybe I'll die in the next 2 weeks. That cough has been for months. Yeah, probably, maybe. Who knows, man? Maybe you know what? I'll go see a doctor at some point. Um, yeah, good point. Good point. The changes we're making today are intended to make clear what has always been true. Our sanctions are not intended to target the people of Zimbabwe. Yeah, right. Yeah, right. No, of course it is, right? You cripple the economy so that the local people somehow have a tirade and fight against the government, so that you can get in the leaders and the puppet leaders that you want. That's how sanctions work, obviously, right? Now, they don't really work that well because, they still can't get the puppet leaders that they're looking for. However, that's the intended purpose, right? You make things difficult for the people. You make trade difficult for the people. You put people through extreme poverty, right? Poverty, not poverty. Yeah. You put people through poverty, and then you basically get the government to collapse, and then you get new government to come in. That's more or less how these things work. Anyways, Deputy Treasury Secretary Wally Adeyemo said, "We are refocusing." Interesting, right? So wait, Wally Adeyemo. That sounds like a Nigerian. No way, man. So the Deputy Treasury Secretary is a Nigerian? Wait, that's interesting. Is that for that does not sound like a Zimbabwean name, and that looks like it's Nigeria, right? Let's see. So Nigerians are coons, man. I knew it, right? The niggas putting sanctions on other countries is Nigerians, right? I'm sharing the screen right now. This nigga, Wally Adeyemo, United States Deputy Secretary of the Treasury. Look at his smile over there, right? We can read a little bit about him. So, of course, right, the Africans have always been utilized, right, as coons against the other Africans. Adewale O. Wale is American government official serving as the United States Secretary of Treasury. He was first appointed by Obama Foundation and also serving Obama administration and Deputy National Security Advisor for international economics from 2015 to 16, right? So yeah, this guy is the one who's out here putting sanctions on other countries. So yeah, shout out to the Nigerians, man. I knew it, right? We had it with the Mali Niger situation. Now they're taking L again, and this is a Yoruba name, Adeyemo, right? That sounds very Yoruba to me over there. Look at his Yoruba smile with the American, you know, government flag over there, right? These, defectors, right? If I was an African president, there will be no place for people like this, right? In my organization, this is definitely ultimate coonery, right? Anyways, let's go ahead and read and fact check about the what's really going on. We're refocusing our sanctions on clear and specific targets. President of Zimbabwe's criminal network of government officials and business people who are most responsible for corruption on human rights abuse against the people of Zimbabwe. Right. So this is kind of crazy, right? So how come there are no sanctions against Israel? Right. Literally a country which have been accused and taken by South Africa to the International I don't know, Court of Justice, right? ICJ. Of course, America's not going to put sanctions on that because that's their ally, right? This is how this works, right? This is insane, right? Apparently, you're focusing on the president of Zimbabwe and his criminal network, whatever that means, right? Let's go ahead, right? Oh, right. You see, it's about gold and certain resources that I talked about earlier. The president is accused of protecting gold and diamond smugglers that operate in Zimbabwe and directing government officials to facilitate for sale of gold and diamonds in illicit markets and taking bribes. Now, this is interesting, right? Let's talk about what's really going here, right? An idiot would not know where this is actually happening, right? Let's be very, very specific. Zimbabwe has sanctions on them, right? They have not been lifted yet, right? But the U.S. Treasury Secretary says that they will be lifted. They claim effective immediately, but let's go and try to analyze what's really going on here, right? Zimbabwe could not trade, right? That means they could not trade easily, right? Because they're under sanctions. They can't even access SWIFT banks easily, right? So, of course, the president and his so-called criminal organization were trading golds, right, and diamonds in any market, whether black market or otherwise, in order to actually get funds to run the government, right? This is very common sense, right? There's no two ways about this, right? Whether they're corrupt, whether they take some money for themselves, that's irrelevant, right? The point is to make Zimbabwe functional, to pay people, right? To have enough money for the Zimbabwe treasury for public services, for it to be somewhat functional, they had to sell gold, diamonds, and other resources to anyone who was willing to pay for it in United States dollars cash, so that they can have money in cash, so that they can purchase machines, right, to reindustrialize, right, set up the farms and make them productive again, right? Without this gold, trading in gold, how else would Zimbabwe get the money when they're not allowed to trade because they had sanctions, right? This is the madness, right, that you hear when you hear anything American, right? Of course, we're having a Nigerian coon saying the words of what America wants to be said. Dr. Z says those dudes are usually linked to high ranking Nigerians. They are hyper selfish and don't even care for the average low ranking Nigerian, let alone other Africans. Coonery for real, right? Shout out to you, AA6YLO. I've interacted with a few and seven, and even worse, with the elite women. But Kaiser, you'll have, you got to speak proper English. You'll have that pompous Yoruba in your team with his Queen's English. That's right. One man is my business partner, right? It is what it is, right? I'm not gonna start hating on all Nigerians, right? He's my business partner. We do trade, and that's what we're trying to do out here. Borderline Brahmin type mentality. Okay, shout out to you. Are there no other international banking system? Yeah, so AA6LY, great question. No, there are none, right? Because obviously, even PayPal has to abide by those things, right? No, there's no other way for them to transact money internationally unless you use Swift. Yeah, there's some black markets somewhere here where you have offshore banks, but here's a problem with all these offshore banks. The moment you start transacting like proper money, remember this is Zimbabwe, it's a country. It needs to transact sometimes billions of dollars, right? If you are excluded from the world banking system, you just can't transact. What that means, A86, is, let me simplify it for you, right? Zimbabwe is a food nation, right? They grow food. In fact, last year they finally hit an over excess of food stability, meaning they produce way more grain than they could consume in that year. So they put it in silos, right? I'm talking about wheat product mainly. For them to have reached that point, they would need to buy tractors and other machines to use, either to grow or to harvest these plants, right? And transport them to the silos. For you to get the machines, you need to actually have dollars to pay for it. But here's a problem. If you want to buy the tractors, there's only a few manufacturers in the world. You can go to China, you can go to Germany, you can go to Netherlands, etc. There are few countries around, maybe Turkey, who can actually make these tractors or other agricultural related machines. For you to buy it from them, you need to be part of the Swift system, right? Like every time you send a money internationally, whether it's through, for example, let me give a very very simple example, right? YouTube, Google Payments, that's all Swift, right? If you can't be allowed to use Google Payments, right? You can't even build a YouTube channel and get payments there. PayPal, right? PayPal is not on the Swift network, but PayPal is an American company. Therefore, PayPal will block Zimbabwe's transactions, right? It's already blocked Nigeria. So any relevant transaction system is blocked from Zimbabwe. So Zimbabwe just can't pay for stuff. That's how sanctions work. Now, there are something else called restrictions. You don't have full sanctions, but what that means is there's high tariffs, right? You can only purchase certain things, maybe necessities like oil or food. You can buy food, right? But you can't buy the machines in order to make your own food. You can buy oil, you know, necessities, right? So there's partial sanctions, right? So that's basically what happened to Zimbabwe. If they're claiming that the sanctions have been lifted, I think this will be great for Zimbabwe, and we might see them to rising again. Zimbabwe used to be Africa's food boss, exactly, right? So low-level people will tell you that, well, when Robert Mugabe took over, somehow he expelled all the white farmers, and that he gave the farms to incompetent black people who didn't even use the farm. That is not quite true, right? I'm sure some of them were incompetent, but no, that's not why Zimbabwe stopped being Africa's breadbasket. It's because of the sanctions. There was no one to sell it to. Other Africans couldn't buy Zimbabwe's food either because Zimbabwe was under sanctions, right? So if you then buy from Zimbabwe, that will put you under sanctions for disobeying United Nations, or rather United States sanctions. You get the point, right? So even if Zimbabwe wanted to sell something, they would have to do it in the black market, right? Or do it in black market means. So right now, the US claims, according to Al Jazeera, to have removed the sanctions from and restrictions from Zimbabwe as a nation, but just put very specific sanctions on the government of Zimbabwe, which is still very similar. What that means is, right, three companies. What that means is Zimbabwean banks are also under sanctions right now, right? These are new sanctions being put under it, right? The president and all his, or not all, but a lot of his colleagues, right? Top government officials of Zimbabwe can't even trade anymore. So, as you can see, this is clearly not an issue of human rights or anything. This is really an issue of the gold and the diamonds being sold in the black market where America can't get easy access of it, right? Because there was a documentary which Al Jazeera, I believe, made. I do believe it was Al Jazeera, about the corruption in Zimbabwe, whereby gold and mostly gold, right, was being trafficked across different nations, and Zimbabwe was willing to sell it to anyone, including Chinese criminals, etc. And as I already explained, the only reason why that's the case is because Zimbabwe was under sanctions. It is really nothing else. It's not that complicated. But of course, the typical idiot will read something like this and think, oh no, Zimbabwe is having human rights abuses. Even this article won't tell you what the human rights abuses are, right? It won't tell you what. It's because it just won't tell you, right? This is how they, yes, it's all about precious metals. Exactly. And let's go ahead. The president is accused of protecting, yeah, so exactly. And anyways, An Al Jazeera investigation, yeah, exactly, it was Al Jazeera that made that video, last year found Zimbabwe's government was using smuggling gangs to sell gold worth hundreds of millions of dollars. Duh. Right? Again, idiots and Al Jazeera will tell you this as if the government is just so corrupt that they just want to keep all that money to themselves. Nah, the government literally needed to do that to actually have a spending budget because they were excluded from the international market. I mean, what do you expect a country to do that's under sanctions? Just sit down and lay down, but they're lucky that they have precious metals in their country. Of course, it makes sense for them to sell it to the bidder that's willing to pay for it. Obvious, right? Helping to mitigate the impacts. Exactly, right. They even, oh my God, I'm done. I'm done and I'm done. Oh my God. They even said it themselves, right? Helping to mitigate the impact of the sanctions. So if you know why they were doing it, how the hell were they criminals, right? This is insane, right? But this is how America plays its games, right? It scams people, it tricks people, right? Um, it tells you that they're doing it for human rights protection. What human rights protections are you doing? Yeah, this is insane, right? They even tell you what it does. Yeah, it was to mitigate the impact of the sanctions. Obviously, gold is the country's biggest export. US Secretary of State Blinken said that the new measures were part of a stronger, more targeted sanctions policy, right? What that basically means is, right, it makes it harder for the government of Zimbabwe to sell this trade, to sell these gold, because it's no longer the countries are unsanctioned, but now individuals. The top officials responsible for selling this gold and these items are now under heavy sanctions. So, no, unfortunately, Zimbabwe sanctions have not ended, right? Because if the officials, right, the top government officials are under sanctions, that's going to make it very difficult for the country to actually move forward, right? This is just another American trick, whereby they've just, done a switcheroo. Key individuals, including members of the government of Zimbabwe, bear responsibility for these actions, including the looting of government coffers that Zimbabwe. How are they looting it when there was nothing in the coffers, when they are under sanctions? It doesn't make sense, right? Blinken said in a statement. All right, so really, just really think about this, guys, right? There's so many countries that are corrupt around the world, right? Zimbabwe just happens to be the country whereby you care about its people because apparently someone is looting the coffers, so you put the country under more sanctions. Something is not sitting right with me here, right? We know why Zimbabwe is under sanctions. It's because of punishment for when they took back the land from the white settlers who stole the land initially, and they didn't want to do what Kenya did or South Africa, having like a long-term repatriation of the land slowly. They said, no, this is our land, we're taking it back. That's the only reason they're under sanctions. Let's just be very clear, right? Multiple cases of abductions, physical abuse, and unlawful killings have left citizens feeling in fear. Really, that's what's making them okay, this is massive. The earlier sanctions were imposed after a campaign of forced takeover of land. Oh, yeah. See, they say, I like Al Jazeera sometimes. At least their facts are accurate, right? It's exactly what I said. The earlier sanctions imposed after a campaign of forced takeover of land from white farmers. Really? No, the white farmers took it forcefully from the Zimbabweans, right? And then the Zimbabweans, after they gained independence, right, the black majority decided to take it back, right, which was lawful under Zimbabwean law, right? We are repatriating the land that belonged to our fathers, forefathers, and mothers, etc., right? That is what happened from the Zimbabwean perspective, right? Again, I'm impressed that Al Jazeera is keeping the facts factual, right? The interpretation is a bit crazy, but the facts isn't bad. And, I respect that, right? I respect that. The Zimbabwean government welcomed those measures removal. Uh-oh. Well, this is massive. Government spokesman Nick wrote on Twitter in what he called great vindication of foreign policy. That says, as long as our president is under sanctions, Zimbabwe will remains under illegal sanctions as long as members of the first family are under sanctions. Yeah, exactly, right? Look at this, right? That said, as long as our president is under sanctions, Zimbabwe remains under illegal sanctions as long as the member of the first family are under sanctions, right? At least the Zimbabweans are not cucks, right? They say, look, Yeah, we thank you for removing the other sanctions, but how are you going to sanction our first family as well as our top officials? How are they going to conduct trade and make the country successful, right? This is just another sanction. As you said, it's more targeted. Zimbabwe remains under illegal sanctions, and as long as senior leadership is under sanctions, we are all under sanctions, he added. State Department spokesman person Matthew Miller quipped in response, it's rare that you see a government say that sanctions on sitting president is victory for the government. Well, duh, right? In Zimbabwe's neighbor, Zambia, President Hakainde, right, praised U.S. President Joe Biden for ending the 2003 program. Okay. This is further evidence that President Biden, and here's again, right? That's why you Africans really need to think about who is your people. Obama was president, yet he never lifted the sanctions against Zimbabwe. All he focused on was lifting sanctions against the rainbow community, right? So I don't know, man. Look, at the end of the day, you need to really be specific, right? If you are African, people are in America, right? These are the kinds of things that you could have asked a president, especially an African descended president, to end, right? Because we don't like the sanctions, because the sanctions impact trade, right? Impacts these nations from being able to do their business. You see how they drop the truth bomb at the bottom of the article? Yeah, exactly. That's a great point. They put it at the bottom of the article and they don't even focus on it. They just put it there as a by the way, that's the fact, right? But they don't actually talk about it. And even, yeah, this is interesting. That's because Zimbabwe using sanctions in their favor. Yep. uh, The president, whose party has been in power for more than 4 decades, was declared the winner in elections last August that international observers said fell short of democratic standards. Yeah. Well, how do you know that? And what do you mean by that? Anyways, let's go ahead, right? They definitely have a point, right? They put it exactly right at the end of the article. That's where they put the facts. The president pushed an ailing Robert Mugabe out of office in 2017. Mugabe died 2 years later at the age of 95. Shout out to him. Ibo Kenna says, so they are lifting the sanction against the country itself and sanctioning key leadership figures because of corruption. What's the problem? So, well, great point, Ibo Kenna, right? So that's a really great question. I'll tell you why. And I can answer that question if you actually want an answer for it. And I'll go back to the part of the argument over here. So let me give you an example. First of all, these leaders are not corrupt, right? Not more corrupt than anyone else that already exists in any leadership. So let me already put that. They're not extraordinarily corrupt. They're putting sanctions on key leaders, right? And key office members. I'm talking about the general, I'm talking about the foreign affairs ministers and ministers of trade, as well as the president and his whole family. They're putting sanctions on them because these people were the people who effectively mitigated the previous sanctions on the nation by trading gold and diamond in international market, whether black or white market, in order to keep the Zimbabwean government functional, right? Ivo Kenna, I hope that makes sense. These people are not corrupt. They were simply selling gold and diamonds in order to actually have spending money in the Zimbabwean public, what do you call it, public coffers, right? The treasury. They didn't do anything corrupt. I've read the whole article, right? And I said it before I even read it. They couldn't come up with anything that they did that was corrupt, apart from the fact that they mitigated the sanctions. So basically, they realized the sanctions didn't work because these guys were too high IQ and were trading gold in the international market with anyone, right? Whether it's criminals or otherwise, in order for them to actually serve their nations. So America got sick and tired of it after Al Jazeera published a video about it. And now America says, you know what? If we actually sanction these people, that might work better for us instead of sanctioning the country, right? Because they don't really want Zimbabwe to rise, right? That's what's going on. So yeah, this is a very, very interesting removal of sanctions. It's not going to work, right? And Zimbabwe is still going to keep selling its gold to anyone so that they can actually make an income, right? That's the logic, and that's why America is doing, playing its game. But anyways, for anyone else who doesn't know about Zimbabwean history, we can go back and watch a video and see how the sanctions came about.
And I think most people's reaction is going to be, why the hell are we going after Zimbabwe? When you think about the countries the US is punishing with financial and trade sanctions, most people know of Iran or Cuba or Venezuela. But the United States has actually maintained a severe sanctions regime against Zimbabwe for the last 21 years, and it hardly gets mentioned in the media. And the worst part is, these sanctions were essentially put in place because Zimbabweans took back their own land from European settlers. Here's what you need to know. Zimbabwe, like many other regions of Africa, was colonized by European powers in the late 19th century. The various European powers met at the Berlin Conference in 1884 and divided up the continent, deciding which powers would control which regions. The British Empire, one of the strongest European powers at the time, decided that it would take massive portions of northern and southern Africa, including Zimbabwe. The man responsible for overseeing Britain's conquest of southern Africa was Cecil Rhodes.
In fact, Zimbabwe was so cucked, right, by Britain that it wasn't even Britain necessarily that was in control. It had a similar contract, not the same, but a similar contract as what happened in the Congo with the Belgians, right? The Belgian king was actually in charge of Congo. He owned Congo. In the Zimbabwe, something very similar. Again, not the same, but similar. Cecil Rhodes controlled parts of Zimbabwe. I mean, Zimbabwe and Zambia and those kind of countries in the Southern African region, right? The whole place was called Rhodesia because it was a country of Cecil Rhodes. So Zimbabwe was actually the name that the Africans renamed after gaining independence, right? But that country was called Rhodesia, and it was part of the same country as Zambia. So actually, this country was heavily cucked by the Europeans, specifically Cecil Rhodes.
An arch racist and an unabashed defender of European imperialism and colonization. To give you an idea of how he thought, here's Rhodes in his own words. It is our duty to seize every opportunity of acquiring more territory, and we should keep this one idea steadily before our eyes, that more territory simply means more of the Anglo-Saxon race, more of the best, the most human, most honorable race the world possesses. And by the way, this is the same Rhodes that the Rhodes Scholarship is named after. In 1890, Rhodes led the British conquest of Zimbabwe and named it Rhodesia, after himself. A little over a decade later, the British controlled 3/4 of the country and made the indigenous Africans tenants on their own land.
Yeah, so let me give context, right, about indigenous Africans being made tenants in their own lands. And I think this is actually something that's embarrassing for Africans and also Black Americans, right? So people know about the slave trade. They understand that Black Americans, by large, was enslaved, right? Unless they gained their freedom from whatever means they gained their freedom. However, you could, as a Black American, be enslaved simply because you're born as a slave or captured somewhere in Africa and brought there as a slave, right? And some people are even caught as freedmen and returned to slavery in rare circumstances. However, people don't really know about Africa, especially Southern Africa. We talk about Namibia, that had a genocide against some of the tribal some of the tribes. Will make a video about that again, orchestrated by the Belgians, right, and people like that, right. Which nobody really knows about Zimbabwe or Kenya or these countries where Britain did have colonial rule under them, right. The British took your land away from you and made you tenants in your own land. Again, they took your house, they built their own nice, beautiful mansion, and you would be living off in what they call the servants' quarters. You would be renting land from them, right? So they take your land and then you rent it off them. You'll be working for them every month to pay your rent. And or, if you make extra money, then you can trade and sell your chickens, right? The British also, introduced very harsh legal structures, which unfortunately Africans still haven't changed today, right? In Kenya, stealing a chicken can still land you into like a year in prison. During the colonial time, stealing a chicken could land you into death. And the reason they say this, right? You're not stealing a chicken. You're actually stealing your own chicken from the colonizers who stole your chicken. So they knew that some Africans was taking the chickens back and eating them. So they actually made stealing chicken illegal and punishable by death, right? And Africans still haven't really changed that law. That right now, stealing a chicken in Africa will still, especially, let's say specifically Kenya, land you to a year's in prison, possibly, right? This is the insanity of the remnant of the colonial control. And again, I don't blame anyone but ourselves for not changing these things, right? These are low hanging fruits that we still, unfortunately, are in the service of an old colonial regime that does not benefit us at all, right? We're still doing it to ourselves. So that is what was happening in Zimbabwe. They were taking your land, forcing you to work on your own land in order for you to survive and pay taxes to them, right? It's insane. That is slavery.
Three-quarters of the country and made the indigenous Africans tenants on their own land, forcing them to pay fees and taxes to live on the land that rightfully belonged to them. Taking the land and all the valuable resources that came with it made the British settlers incredibly wealthy. On the flip side, having their land taken, black Rhodesians were forced to become wage laborers, working for the white landowners for barely enough to scrape by. The typical white neighborhood in Rhodesia had big luxury houses with big lawns and gardens, while most black people lived in cramped substandard housing. The only black people that lived in the nicer white neighborhoods were domestic workers, who took care of household labor and landscaping. They lived on their white employers' properties. The white monopoly over the land also gave whites a monopoly over the Rhodesian political.
But here's the thing, right? Someone would argue, well, Kaizo, Zimbabwe is such a large country. Why, and with such a small white minority there, right? Why didn't the blacks just move to the other parts of the country? Well, here's the issue with that, right? In Africa, you have different tribes, you have different clans of the same tribe. Also, you cannot just go to some other random tribe and take their land. Also, you can't do that because then that will be you taking someone else's land. That land is owned by someone, the tribes, right? Tribal chiefs, etc., own the land, and you can't just do whatever you want with it. That's the issue, and you cannot just force random tribes into a new land together because that's not going to cause peace either, right? There's culture, there's integration, and there's all sorts of things happening. Also, because they introduced these new laws in a country like Zimbabwe and Kenya, what that meant is you had to pay your taxes. If you didn't have a job, they could even, again, similar laws, right? Everybody knows about the Jim Crow in Black America, but nobody knows about what actually happened in East Africa and Southern Africa when the British were in control, right? There were similar laws for vagrancy, right? You actually, there was something in Kenya called the Kipande system. What that means is it's an ID system. They give you an ID. The ID states where you're born, where you're from, your tribe, and what skills you're good at, right? And what that means is, right, you cannot just travel wherever you want looking for a job in the country. You have to get permission, almost like a passport, from some British officer, right? In order for you to even travel around your own country. So you could not just leave where the British took your land and somehow go to the dust and find a new land. Again, other tribes exist there. Secondly, you are now integrated to a system where you're an underclass and you can't even travel freely because you have to have a Kipande system. And at this time, women weren't necessarily given the Kipande system. So they had to even rely on their men in order for them to travel as well. Again, Africans did not have any anti-woman legislations prior to colonialism, right? So anything that we as Africans have sort of learned, we learned it from the colonialists, right? And we implemented what they implemented to ourselves afterwards. We refused to change, right? This is what was happening in Africa during colonialism, right? That is the same stuff as the redlining. It's the same stuff as all the sort of things that happen in Black America. But again, people don't know this, right? People only just think, oh, Africa's colonized. They don't know what that actually meant, right? They don't know the specifics of what colonization actually led to. I'm just giving some of it so at least we are all on the same page about colonialism, right? Let me see if I can find a Kipande ID system, right, from those times just to show you how it looked like. And of course, I already explained how the system worked, right? But all I can tell you is it was not a good system. Definitely is something where Kenyans and other Africans who did have it must really look back and never return to such a thing, right? Let me see if I can get access to this network. Okay, let's see. Yeah, so I'm just sharing my screen. Okay, I think it's sharing the screen. Yeah. Okay, here it is. IDs crisis, history of the Kenyan identity card. And all I can say is the identity card has not changed that much, right? There's still some very colonial, very irregular, very non-logical things that happen with the Kenyan ID that hasn't seemed to evolve. And when I've told people about it, nobody seems to even understand why I have issues with the Kenyan ID system. They're always defending it rather than it's kind of interesting, right? You might tell someone something simple and low hanging fruit, something that they can resolve in a very easy manner. And instead of them resolving it, they will start making excuses for the ID system. It's kind of interesting. It's kind of like black people protecting white supremacy rather than challenging it. And I'll get into that in a second, but let me just go read a little bit of this article, right? Over here. So this is how some of it look like. Identity cards, there they are, right? What you need to know: the Kipande determined job opportunities and the freedoms of movement across the country. Again, this is a country, not even going to another country. No, no, no. Even within your own country, you are not allowed to move freely. Women were not issued government IDs until about 4 decades ago, right? So this is how, if you're a female feminist, you need to understand that this was issued by the colonial government, nothing to do with the Africans, right? It was worn like a necklace with a metallic pendant when it was first rolled out in Kenya in 1915, or like an eye cash on a dog, right? Like a leash on a dog. Every man above 16 was required to dangle it around their neck, right? So you had to show it. So we know history about the Jews, having to have the Star of David on them, branded during Germany Nazi occupation, etc. But nobody knows about what was happening in East Africa, right? So you had to dangle in your neck, right? You were a slave in your own nation. It was basically a bunch of documents nestled in a copper container that had a chain, right? The kipande was its name. Uh, here they too free to roam up and down the land. The men were now supposed to demonstrate that the colonial master knew them, right? So again, if you didn't have this, you could be captured by the British, put into prison, or put into a concentration camps. There were concentration camps during colonialization, right? And here's an example of how they look like, right? You have a metal, some copper tin there. They have some documents inside it, and then they would be issued stating exactly what the government allowed you to do, right? The Kapani determined job opportunities and freedom, right? Most hated it to the point of enlisting in the guerrilla armies formed to eject the colonialists. An example is, of course, the Mau Mau. With time, the leash was shelved, giving away to the passbook, right? Over there. Proof of being a legitimate adult in the eyes of the government now needed to be carried in the pocket. Women were not issued government IDs until about 4 decades ago. The terror of not having the document, which is today a plastic credit card size second generation identity card, may be as cuddling today as it was in the colonial era. And so let me give you context here, right? I've lived in the UK for a while. Never have I ever actually shown a police or anyone my ID. I've never had to use my ID in the whole UK, apart from when I'm applying for jobs or when I'm applying for something, right? They ask for my ID, because they need your ID to verify your identification so that they can give you access to, credit cards or whatever. However, in Kenya, even today, the police and everybody, they have this crazy system of everyone needs to actually carry the ID. I believe it's law that you're supposed to carry the ID. If you don't have the ID, the police will arrest you, harass you, and do all sorts of things, perhaps pin crimes on you, right? This is how kind of the legacy of colonialism still happens. Kenyans are still oppressing Kenyans using this same system over here in the modern days. Same in Cameroon. So let's go ahead. Take the example of a bearded Kenyan with a slightly receding hairline, but who does not have an ID card, or a woman carrying a toddler. Okay. Get the picture. Someone so old as being incapable of getting away with lying that they are underage. That person will have a hard time entering most buildings in Kenyan cities. Yeah, this is kind of interesting, right? And again, legacy of colonialism. There's simple, very simple facts that just don't make sense. Like, I'll give you an example. This system, right? To me, it's retarded, right? It makes no logical sense. It would make more sense if you want an ID system that everybody's given an ID, even at the point of birth. You just do it the same, an ID card, and a birth certificate, right? However, when you turn 18, of course, guess what? The ID card states the age that you are. So people know if you're 18 or not, and you are whatever. You can be treated as an adult. I don't get it. That's how every other country does it. But Kenya, for some reason, until you're 18 years old, you don't have an ID. So that doesn't even make sense. If they need your ID to know that you are of age and you're a legitimate citizen, why don't you just give it to everybody? How come they don't give it to under 18? This is insane. What if it's for terrorism, right? You might have people that look young but are used for terrorism. Don't you think it makes sense to ask them for ID as well? The whole system makes zero sense. And these are the sort of the things which I see as lower hanging fruits, right? Lower hanging fruits, things that are still, having legacies of colonialism that literally don't make no sense. A shout out to Emperor. I'm glad you acknowledge that we have enemies both sides. Now it'll be easy to solve African problems. I've always acknowledged it. I think I just said that the enemies, right? You should just give everyone an ID. And then when they're 18, of course, it says their age there. You have the date of birth, right? That someone can clarify if you're over 18 or not, right? Otherwise, right now, you have young terrorists. It just doesn't make sense. The person will have a hard time entering most buildings. It is until you meet a devilishly determined goody two-shoe guard that you realize that your IDs is most important when you don't have it. Not having an ID will see you frozen out by guards. This is true, by the way. Who will demand that you call the person you need to see or go back to fetch your identification documents. A driving license or passport could suffice in most cases, as they are considered legal identification documents in Kenya. Speaking of calling that person, will also not be eligible to get a mobile phone number that is truly theirs, meaning they either have to use a line registered someone else's name or have no line at all. That also means M-Pesa and other mobile-based cash transfer services will be out of reach for them. Right? And this is, of course, how you have some people just not able to get into the Kenyan system. Perhaps they come from marginalized communities whereby they haven't even integrated education, so they are just left out of the whole system. Should that person wish to open a bank account? Yeah, right? I think it's just repeating itself, right? Over there. But this is unfortunately how it used to be. No, it still is actually. Lo, what am I on? Right? This is the issue, right? It's a crazy ID system that was introduced by the British, and I still don't get why we just follow it to the T. You can't push the colonizers' evil deeds under the rug because it will help cover their evil deeds. Yep.
Was dominated by whites despite the fact that the country was overwhelmingly black. To give you an idea of how skewed Rhodesia's political system was, in 1976, Rhodesia's black population was over 6 million, while the white population was only 250,000. Despite this, of the 6 million black people in Rhodesia, only 9,000 had the right to vote. This allowed white voters to elect 50 members of Rhodesia's parliament, whereas black voters only elected 16. Many in the United States understandably compared this to Jim Crow. Rhodesia's Prime Minister Ian.
Yep. As I said, right, Black Americans and other Africans only know that South Africa is the country that had what they considered a similar experience to Black America. However, that's not true. Kenya, Zimbabwe, Zambia, Namibia, Congo, all these countries literally had the same experience of Jim Crow, and actually worse, slavery, right? Because they take your land and make you work on the land in order for you to pay them the money to be allowed to stay on your land, right? Again, as a tenant, not as an owner. That's slavery. You weren't allowed to move freely within your own nation anymore because now you had to have these ID systems. You had to get permissions, right? And if your request to travel to a new place in Kenya or Zimbabwe or any of these countries I've mentioned that had the same system, if it was not within what they, within whatever they valued, you weren't allowed to do it, right? These countries had the same experience.
Smith famously declared that he would never support black majority rule in the country, not in 1,000 years. The government was so committed to white minority rule that it would go on to draft every white man under the age of 38 into the military to fight a bloody war against black liberation fighters instead of making concessions to them. However, no amount of conscription can change the reality that this country did not, nor did it ever, belong to white people. They had merely occupied it. Recognizing that a white-led government in southern Africa would never last, in 1979, the Rhodesian government pressured the black freedom fighters into an agreement called the Lancaster House Agreement in an attempt to salvage some semblance of white power. The Lancaster House Agreement reserved parliamentary seats for whites, and instead of simply returning the stolen land back to its rightful owners, set up a market-based system called willing buyer, willing seller, where the government of the newly named Zimbabwe would have to buy their own land back from the white farmers using foreign currency. The value of the land would be determined by foreign real estate companies owned by these very same white farmers. Zimbabwe's newly elected president.
Wait. You had that right. So they set up companies that will be facilitating trade between the farms, right? Uh, Again, you have to buy back your farms. How are you going to get the money from, right? You've not been earning enough money, right? So you have to buy back your farm. And guess what? You're using the same companies owned by these white farmers to buy it back. So you realize that you're losing on both sides. It's insane, right? But that's the Lancaster Agreement. That was again, it was they were pressurized black liberation fighters in order to sign it. So if you want to know history of a true black African country that fought back against colonizers under tumultuous circumstances, Zimbabwe is definitely one of them. They did not yield. They weren't simply given independence. They fought for it, right? Zimbabwe, if they didn't fight for their independence, the white minority would still be ruling them today, right? They would have got so-called independence from Britain, but they would not have gotten independence from their minority, occupiers who, again, had more rights than the black indigenous communities, right? By their backland. Exactly. So again, why am I saying all this story? This is all related to the sanctions that the American government actually reinstated at 2003, has claimed to end, but has also put new sanctions on top Zimbabwean officials as well as the president and his family. This is insane, right? Because they high IQly discovered a way to mitigate the sanctions by utilizing gold and diamonds in the trade, right? So this is unfortunately how things work, right? Again, usually I call Africans low IQ. Sometimes, not so much these days. I talk about the corruption, and all of that is true. But I do like to acknowledge when the history shows the truth, right? What's really happening to a country, right? Zimbabwe is not a country of corrupt people or anything that the news and everybody else who like to tell you. Zimbabwe fell because of sanctions. There's nothing else. Zimbabwe was a very thriving nation. Harare was actually one of the most beautiful cities in Africa. Still is, actually, if you look at the infrastructure. Zimbabwe is one of the most educated Africans. They're highly skilled. The issue is sanctions.
Robert Mugabe, who had become a preeminent leader in the liberation struggle, tried to adhere to the Lancaster Agreement, but progress was slow. For most of this time, Western powers praised Mugabe as a kind of moderate, reasonable force. But even a decade after the end of the war, in the fall of Rhodesia, whites still controlled the vast majority of the land. In 1998, it was estimated that 95% of the economy was owned by white people or foreign investors. Many veterans of the Liberation War were getting tired of waiting. After all, they had risked their lives for this land, and they were beginning to feel that all of that fighting had been for nothing. The war veterans started occupying the white farms on their own accord, and Mugabe then gave the veterans the government's backing. In direct response to this policy, the US Congress passed its first set of sanctions against Zimbabwe, freezing Zimbabwe's credit. For the next 21 years, the US, EU, and Canada would go on to repeatedly punish Zimbabwe.
Yeah, so freezing credit. What do you think that means? Well, that means any money that the Zimbabwean government had in dollars in foreign banks would be frozen. What that means is also Zimbabwe was now being slowly not allowed to use a SWIFT system. Whatever system they had at that time, it doesn't really matter. But the same system of trade, whereby you can buy and sell things and gain foreign currency through that region. This is exactly what crippled Zimbabwe's economy, not corruption, not Mugabe. Mugabe did nothing wrong apart from take a stance against white supremacy. Again, whether you think that was the right move or not, that's a different discussion and argument. But that is all he did that was wrong, right? Taking a stance and losing in taking that stance. That's what he did wrong, right? He didn't, steal land, give it to corrupt people. No, because people used to say things like, well, no, the reason Zimbabwe failed is because Zimbabwe took the farms from the white farmers who were productive and trading, and gave it to incompetent black farmers who couldn't even maintain production. No, it's because Zimbabwe was under sanctions. They couldn't sell any food. So Zimbabwe became food secure for the longest time because they couldn't trade excess food to other countries, so they didn't overproduce like they used to before the sanctions.
For what amounts to taking back its own land. The latest round of sanctions is just a continuation of this neocolonial history. After a 2-week trip in Zimbabwe, the UN Special Rapporteur on Sanctions wrote a report calling on the various countries sanctioning Zimbabwe.
Well, it's kind of interesting, right? Those who believe in concepts such as white supremacy, this is a very clear case of white supremacy, right? Putting sanctions on a black country for simply giving land back to its original owners, whose the land was never bought but stolen from. Now you can realize why this is close to America's heart. America did something similar. Sure, they bought a lot of land from the tribes, but they also stole some of it. And also, when they were buying these lands, right? Of course, a lot of the natives didn't even know the contracts that they were signing. So I do think, right, that there is a spiritual link between America's hell-bent actions against or sanctions against Zimbabwe, because it's a similar history to theirs, right? In their history, they succeeded. In Zimbabwe's history, a black African succeeded in reclaiming their land. I honestly believe that this is a clear case example of white supremacy, right? US is not putting sanctions on Israel for any of these so-called human rights abuses, but it only does it to countries like this. That is my honest opinion here. So if you niggas who love to talk about white supremacy, this is a perfect example where it actually is clear, right? There's evidence of it.
To lift these measures because of the devastating effect they had on the country. The report describes a country unable to develop because the financial sanctions against it prevent it from accessing credit and trading on the international market. The report states that financial restrictions prevent Zimbabwe from importing new technology and spare parts, which has rendered much of its health, transportation, energy, water, and other critical infrastructure obsolete. These policies have created a crisis of food insecurity, with over 7 million Zimbabweans going hungry in a country of 15 million, as well as a crisis of disease due to Zimbabwe's inability to import parts needed to clean its own water. The sanctions against Zimbabwe's state-owned companies have deprived Zimbabwe of revenue that it needs to fund essential services. In total, it's estimated that sanctions have deprived Zimbabwe of over $100 billion worth of aid and loans since 2001, a sum 4 times greater than the country's GDP. The Western media still demonizes Zimbabwe as a country that's apparently racist against whites for having expropriated the land they stole. They mock Zimbabwe and the land reform, saying that it's what made Zimbabwe poor, completely leaving.
Well, yeah, it is what made Zimbabwe poor, but it's the sanctions that made Zimbabwe poor, right? That was enacted by these America, right? America did not put sanctions against the Southern African government, but they put sanctions against Zimbabwe. I mean, this is very clear cut white supremacy, and it's kind of interesting how you guys like to choose examples that don't exist, right? I have the ability to see what's right and wrong, obviously, right? But I also like when things are clear cut and the case is closed. I don't like when you're out here, pulling straws, right? Looking so deep for needles in haystacks. I like it when it's clear, and this is a very clear example of white supremacy.
Out any mention of the crushing sanctions designed to strangle Zimbabwe's economy. Western governments love to talk about.
AA6 says, at this point, I would rather say dominance rather than supremacy. Yeah, well, okay, so the concept of supremacy, I agree with you. The action of dominance, yes. Do you know, Kaiser, the United States is weakening Germany and putting a strain on its relationships with Russia because it doesn't want stronger Europe. A more united Europe is a greater competitor. Yes, yes. Well, yes, that, of course, of course. America wants to control everyone, but there is a hierarchy of control. Correct.
Respecting property rights. But what about when a whole ownership structure is premised on racism, theft, and colonialism? It's obvious that the real right is African people's right to reclaim ownership over what was always theirs. So let's be clear. This is not about human rights or corruption. Never has been. Whether it's the Berlin.
Uh-oh. I like this white man, right? He made it very clear. Not like Al Jazeera out there talking in talking in double speech, right? Yeah, it's never been about human rights or anything else. It's always been about racism. It's always been about white dominance, right? As AA6 says. And it is because I believe America spiritually has an issue with Zimbabwe because it stole its land, right, from the natives, right? That is an opinion that I have on this whole topic, right? Because America is just hell bent on a random country, right? Zimbabwe is not a threat to American security. Zimbabwe is so far away from America, right? Zimbabwe is not communist, right? It's not Cuba, right? It's not Venezuela, right? Again, I'm not saying I agree with the sanctions of these other countries. I'm just saying there isn't even any reason for America to be so hell bent on targeting Zimbabwe apart from white dominance.
Never has been. Whether it's the Berlin Conference, sanctions against Zimbabwe, the war on Libya, or AFRICOM's expansion, it's always been about punishing any African country that defies Western powers.
Yep. I don't think I can disagree with that. I sometimes I really do like clear cases of colonialism or aspects of these madness that we see without having to go digging so deep and drawing out straws and stuff.
Now we are joined by Chairperson of Zimbabwe Anti-Sanctions Movement, Rutendo Matinyarere. Thank you so much for your time this afternoon. First, let's get your reaction to this move by the US to firstly terminate the existing sanctions regime against Zimbabwe. But while sanctioning Zimbabwe's President Emerson Mnangagwa and his wife and senior government officials for their alleged involvement in what they say is corruption and human rights abuses. Your take?
Thank you so much. And I initially thought that you had mischaracterized what had happened, which is the removal of executive order sanctions, which constitute about 93% or 99% of the Zimbabwean sanctions being removed, and 100% of sanctions on the Zimbabwean people, the government of Zimbabwe, and its parastatals and companies being removed. We are absolutely ecstatic about that because we believe that we played a very big role with the court case that we were having here in South Africa, where we actually had Joe Biden answering to our papers, and we were going to challenge his application for immunity to DERCO and ask him to answer to the illegal sanctions that he's got on Zimbabwe that he forces South African companies to implement. The fact that those sanctions have been removed is a very great thing. And when we look at these new...
Okay, so this is interesting, right? It doesn't seem like America just removed the executive order sanctions. It looks like there was a court case in South Africa, especially because, as you mentioned, there are South African companies that want to trade with Zimbabwe, right? It's part of SADC, right? It's within the same region, and it makes it very difficult. So they were like, hang on, this doesn't make sense. These companies have done nothing wrong. We've done nothing wrong. Why are we not able to trade within our own region with another country? So it looks like there was some kind of court case that even Biden had to step up on the stand and explain how and why these sanctions exist in 2024. So this is very interesting, which actually leads to my main point that I always bring up, right? Leverage, right? Power is what actually will get you far. Pleading and praying for things to change is not the best strategy, right? Hopium is not the best strategy. Sometimes you need power. And I'm going to look a little bit deeper into this. I'm going to take a rabbit hole, right? I'm going to look deeper into this so-called court case that's been going on to lift these sanctions, right? This is very interesting sort of information. I like Rutendo, right? He's very intelligent, very well-spoken. Whether I agree with him or not is irrelevant on everything, but I like him generally, and I see his points generally, right? The South Africans always practice mental gymnastics as for the real reason Zimbabwe fail even some Zimbabweans, right? Zimbabwe sanctions. So this is interesting. So they were sued, and I think that definitely helped remove the sanctions because they will look bad on America. Interesting. This is shout out to Rutendo for giving the piece of information for us to sort of dig deeper and try to figure out what's more is happening. I'll read from Reuters. and then I'll see if I a different source as well to kind of see what's going on. But yeah, this is for me this is interesting. I definitely love deep diving into things. So just sharing my screen again. I don't know if it's come up yet. Yes, it has now. Darth says the South Africans always practice mental gymnastics. Yeah, I agree there. U.S. So here it is, right? This is from 2024. U.S. issues fresh curbs on Zimbabwe's president. How to terminate sanctions. No, this is the same report that I read earlier from Al Jazeera. I wanted to look at what the court case and what was happening previously. Give me a second. U.S. claims immunity from South African courts in Zimbabwe sanctions case. This is interesting. Um, yeah, let me dig up the article. I'm just looking at it through LinkedIn, but I'll rather look at the actual article from wherever it's posted. Uh, okay, I found some random website. Let's see about the article and see if there's anything here for us. Cool. So this was in 2023. Let's go. U.S. claims immunity from South African courts in Zim sanctions case. U.S. President Joe Biden among those summoned in legal action to have sanctions against Zimbabwe declared unlawful. So this is interesting, right? As Darth and people like that, like Nigel, love to say some low IQ things like, we're moving towards a multipolar world. Things are different. America ain't the only empire around. We got the Chinese, we got the Iran, we got the Russians, right? But they never explain what that means, right? And that's why I always fight them, right? I like things where you can put one and one and we make two, right? So this is a good example of a multipolar world. And it's going to be like, okay, so you see, I was right. Bro, it's not about being right or being wrong. It's about providing evidence, right? Anyways, let's go ahead and let's read this article. The United States Embassy in Preston has issued a diplomatic note to South African claiming that the Johannesburg High Court lacks jurisdiction over the U.S. In the case brought here. Now, what this means is, right, if the South African court found that the U.S. sanctions are either illegal or unlawful or lacking actual reasoning behind it, that South Africa, will still trade with Zimbabwe under SADC, right? So this is kind of interesting. So it's a push for power. It also shows precedent because you've done a legal case, you've done it through so-called democratic jurisdiction, right? And this is kind of interesting, right? I'm seeing how this new world is happening here, right? By the Zimbabwean anti-sanctions movement, right? Seeking to have sanctions against Zimbabwe declared unlawful, unconstitutional, and invalid, right? Because what this means is if South African began trading legally with Zimbabwe companies, America will lose power because now there's someone who's showing open defiance. But not just that, open defiance with a legitimate ruling from their country, which has jurisdictions over its land and is in agreement with another foreign sovereign nation. This is kind of interesting. Now I think I'm seeing a little bit of why South Africa is also taking Israel into the International Court of Justice. They're playing the new game and they're learning Machiavellianism, which I think is good for African nations to do. This is interesting. The case was filed in March 2022, citing as a respondent the United States President of the U.S., the Senate, Speaker of the U.S. House of Representatives, Secretary of the U.S. Treasury, Head of the U.S. Office on Foreign Assets Control, and Chair of the United States Committee of Relations. This is interesting. Wait, don't tell me that I have to pay in order to read the rest of it. Uh-oh. No, niggas don't want to pay. That's I want to read the free paper. This is annoying, huh? Right? An interesting paper, and they're trying to make me pay for it, right? Putting it behind a paywall. Well, that is very, very annoying and very unfortunate, right? Because I was getting into that paper, right? I was actually getting into that paper. But unfortunately, Dwight Man has put walls, which I, unfortunately, with my little pygmy feet, cannot overcome. Right? So shout out to them for catching me right in the middle. I was excited. I was like, yeah, yeah, yeah. But alas, I have been dumbfounded. I have been stopped by the clutches, right? I have been stopped. But I'll see if I can find a way around this, right? Let's see. And tables are not fun for sure. But yeah, Dusty, if you want to join the show, click on the link, join the conversation. If you have anything to say, you want to add, you want to take away, it doesn't really matter. It's always good to hear the opinions of Africans about things that relate to Africans in general. Of course, um, just looking for this article. I guess I kind of found it. Yeah, I found it. I guess I found the article on LinkedIn, so I'm gonna. Hmm, let's see. Yeah, I'm still looking for it. I'm still looking for it. Got there. Anyways, let's go on a 5 minute break, then I'll be back. Welcome to the Kaizorian experience. Over here, we're going to be talking about everything African. We're going to be having debates, discussions, entertainment, as well as learning about business, art, history, and everything in between. Cultural, tribalism, and everything. We're going to be out here debating with some really interesting stuff. So, like the video, share the video, and make sure you subscribe. Make sure you subscribe. Subscribe for the best experience ever. This is the biggest channel on the Afrosphere. So come and join the team, become a Kaizorian, and join the Kaizorian Empire.
Within this premise that exists within this bluebird in the sky. I'ma fly like the blue in the sky. I'ma fly like bird in the sky. I'ma fly like bluebird in the sky. I'ma fly like bluebird in the sky. I'ma fly like bluebird in the sky. I'ma throw my bluebird in the sky. I'ma soar like bluebird in the sky. I'ma soar like bluebird in the sky. I'ma fly like bluebird in the sky. I'ma fight like bluebird in the sky. I'ma eat like bluebird in the sky. I'ma be like bluebird in the sky. I'ma be bluebird in the sky. I'ma be free, bluebird in the sky. I'ma be free like bluebird in the sky. I'ma be like bluebird in the sky. Back again like the second coming. Strumming my vocal cords like the hummingbird in the sky. Y'all can't deny this. Real rap lyrics, it's like I ain't got no rhyming through the sky limit. What is skin tone, shade of color, but a proud love.
Yeah, so let me share my screen again, and I will continue in this little rabbit hole. Oh, that's good, one man.
Una momento. Yeah, una momento, por favor. Una momento.
Okay, okay.
Comprende una momento?
Yes, I understand.
Das sprechen Deutsch?
That's not
Sprechen
Deutsch.
Deutsch? Wie geht's? Wie geht's?
Oh, you're speaking different languages now.
We get. Look at this guy. I thought you said you had somewhat of an education. We get.
Yes, do you understand?
Yeah.
I know.
No,
Come
it's
on.
not. I know. We get.
V get? What's that? Do
It,
you
it means.
understand?
It means how are you in German.
Oh, okay, German. I'm
And
not
then
too good. I know.
what you're meant to respond with is mein get is good, danke. Mein get is good, danke. I
Okay,
am
I know
very well,
Danke.
thank you.
I
You know.
I know Danke, but I don't know the other parts in case I say something weird.
All right, let me stay in the background. Let me listen to carry on. I'm here though.
Okay, okay. So let's see. To the extent that the court purports to summon, see, I found the rest of the document somewhere, and I've copied it here. So, to the extent that the court purports to summon the President of the United States of America, the U.S. Embassy wishes to remind the department that, pursuant to customary international law, the President of the United States of America is the head of is the head of state and the head of government for the United States of America, and that therefore he enjoys absolute immunity from criminal and civil jurisdictions of the Republic of South Africa. Says the diplomatic note from the United States Embassy dated there. The note says that U.S. Office of Foreign Assets Control has no legal personality in South Africa, separate from the United States government, and has therefore not been properly named as a defendant, not been properly named as a defendant in the case. Okay, so this is out their response to them being indicted. Consistent with the customary international law and the law of South Africa, the embassy notes that the United States of America intends, to the extent necessary, to claim immunity in this matter because the court does not have the jurisdictions to adjudicate the issues raised, says the diplomatic note. They were basically saying, we don't want any issues. We do not want to be held responsible, and we do not accept that you have any jurisdictions over us. This runs counter to the Zimbabwe's anti-sanctions movement argument in its court filings that the Joburg High Court has the necessary jurisdiction because the U.S. and South African banks cited as respondents have offices in Johannesburg and are under obligations to apply U.S. sanctions. Yeah, so this is interesting. This one here does not make sense, right? This part here. So again, guys, just to be clear, right? These sanctions are banks, right? What that basically means is South African banks, if they know Zimbabwe is under sanctions, they are not legally allowed to take or give money to Zimbabwe, and allow facilitation of trade, right? That is what's going on here, right? Exchange of currencies, exchange of dollars, exchange of rand. It doesn't really matter because of the U.S. sanctions. They are supposed to be there and they are supposed to comply with it. So let me read this statement here again. It doesn't make fully much sense to me yet. This runs counter to Zimbabwe's anti-sanctions movement's argument in its court filings that the Joburg High Court has the necessary jurisdictions because the U.S. and South African banks cited as respondents, right? So they cited specific banks here, have offices in Johannesburg and are under obligation to apply U.S. sanctioning. Yeah, that part doesn't make sense, right? The logic there is not running, right? Perhaps they're telling me a story, but it's not logical what I'm reading. The United States claims that the South African High Court does not have the jurisdiction to determine the legality of the enforcement of United States law within South Africa. Huh? That doesn't even make sense. What the hell? What? What? This is interesting, right? This kind of response doesn't even make sense to me, right? If I'm interpreting this correctly, they're saying that the United States claim that South Africa's High Court does not have the jurisdiction to determine the legality of the enforcement. Again, not the legality just by itself, right? I would agree with that argument. The legality of the enforcement of United States law within South Africa. They're basically saying you're cucked. Even within your own nation, you don't have the jurisdiction to regulate the rule. Oh my gosh, this is interesting.
So sorry, read that again to get a better understanding because that's not what it sounds like when you just read it.
Okay, good. Someone higher IQ than me is here.
Do you want me to read it?
Yes, you read it.
Right. It says the United States claims that South Africa High Court does not have the jurisdiction to determine the legality of the enforcement of United States law within South Africa, uh, which is a colonial argument. So that which is a colonial
Oh
argument
yeah,
is an
I get it
argument
now.
in itself. But
I get it now.
it's a standalone truism, isn't it? How can a southern African space have the jurisdiction to supersede a determination on American law over how the American will have it? It's
In
like me saying
South
I'm more
African.
Kenyan than you. That's essentially what that means. Me saying I'm more Kenyan than you. How can that be?
Yeah, this is interesting. I think I get it now. So this is the response by the ZAM, right? The ZAM are saying basically what previously the response by the Americans is that Americans are basically saying that Joburg can't make its own rulings on American law in South Africa, which is where Joburg is, right? So now I get it. That's exact Zimbabwe's anti sanctions movement. Okay, it makes sense right now. So they're saying, no, this is stupid. America, how are you telling South Africa can't regulate the actions, right, of American law in South African soil? This is crazy, right? That is actually crazy, one man. But you see, one man, why, if you people came to me with these very specific, very logic, right, 1 + 1 is equals 2 cases of post-colonialism, imperialism, racism, white dominance and supremacy, I would have been okay with it. But none of you ever provide actual evidence. You just talk in big terms. Oh, they're controlling our leaders. They're controlling our people. You just always talk of
Yeah,
things
but the
that
devil is
don't
always
have.
in the detail, isn't it? Kaizo, in law, there's something called locus standi. I think that's how it's pronounced, locus standi. It means the legal footing. Essentially, that's what that means.
Mhm.
And a lot of people they get into the fog and the funk of a language, and they think you are trying to diddle them with clever words, but embedded in in those clever words are the actual realities of it. I can some you know tree climbing elements in Zimbabwe who are still hunting bolabos and baboons be having the interpretation of American law. How can that possibly be?
Mm, interesting. Interesting. So, what do you think is happening? Do you think that this court case, which happened, it was filed in 2022, but it was sort of commenced in 2023, do you think that this has any sort of bearing to why Biden, again, he was, he was, what that this would mean is if Biden was found guilty in this court, this would create issues for even America having its embassy and acting in South Africa because there would be a violation of South African law. Do you think that this is actually part of the issue, because America is a South African so-called ally, whatever that means? Do you think that basically the South Africans helped push uh, Biden and his, whatever administration to formally remove the sanctions from the nation? But of course, America can't lose everything, so instead they put sanctions on the leadership of the nation as opposed to the people. What's your thoughts on what's going on here?
So sorry, I was speaking muted. All right. I'm only really coming halfway. I really came into the conversation pretty much when I hopped onto the screen. But just in the broader strokes of it, the Americans will never let these people have the advantage over them. That's one. And I don't think anything in South Africa impacts on Biden significant. Do you think this is making any news in America? Do you think
Yeah.
even on Fox News, which is virulently opposed to democratic sort of the Democrats this is just it's more of an issue wherever it is than anything to do with America.
Hmm. Yeah, I think that's an interesting point. So you think America independently came up with a new sanctions against the leadership and removed the old sanctions on Zimbabwe for its own reasons, not because they were pressurized?
No, no, I think that is I think that is the natural evolution of these sanctions now, because what we're finding with these sanctions against uh um nations that the Western space is looking to vest upon, what they are finding with those sanctions is when they apply those broad stroke sanctions, the those broad stroke sanctions are invoiced to the populace, and the elite continue to live their extravagant lifestyle as they've always done. So it doesn't impact on them. So it then doesn't serve the purpose that those sanctions are meant to serve. So what now seems to be coming out of this particular narrative is that they're now trying to pinpoint the sanctions to where it will have the most impact to effect what that sanction is essentially out there to do.
Okay, so uh, I'm going to make some clarifications, not corrections, clarifications. Just so everything you said is correct, minus the context. Just so that we're all on the same page. Um, America's sanctions on Zimbabwe purpose was because Zimbabwe stole the land back from the white settlers after the white settlers were after so white supremacy was ended in Zimbabwe and the black majority gained independence. So Mugabe basically led a movement where he allowed black South Africans to Zimbabweans to steal the land back from the white settlers. So U.S. put sanctions on them in 2003. That was the reason. It was land reforms, or rather,
No, sorry,
dealing with land.
substitute that word "steal" with "take." It didn't belong
Okay,
to the whiteys in the first instance, so they took their land back. Yeah, but carry on.
okay. They took their land back, but from the United States, they think they stole their land back. But anyways, so after taking the land back, sanctions in 2003 became a big thing, right? From US, nobody could be allowed to trade with them legally. That means banks, anyone involved in transactions and trade. Now, moving on to 2023, Al Jazeera does a documentary. I think I've shared it partially on one of these channels before, basically of the gold smuggling, corruption going on in Zimbabwe. Now, anyone with a left foot, left toe will realize there's nothing corrupt going on there. It's Zimbabwean top officials, president, and everyone involved not stealing, selling gold and diamonds to the international market. Anyone, whether it's criminals or otherwise, because they don't have dollars. They don't have money to run the economy, so they need to sell it to anyone. And of course, America got wind of this after the Al Jazeera report and realized, okay, so they're this is why Zimbabwe never broke. It's why Zimbabwe is not a Somalia or a Burundi, or Zimbabwe is nowhere in the poorest country list, right? They're doing better than most African countries, even while being under heavy sanctions. So they were like, oh, so this is how they mitigate sanctions, by basically trading gold and other natural resources that they have to the highest bidder in any market, legal or illegal, right? So that's why again, I'm not making this up. This is a story that's there, and even the U.S. secretaries stated that they're putting sanctions on them for human rights violations. They didn't state which ones, and because they mitigated the sanctions, right? So this is kind of interesting. So you see what I'm trying to say, one man here. So this is very different. You are right, correct by the logic of what you stated about this is the evolution of sanctions, but the intentions in this whole case is actually very racialized. And this is the first time I would agree with you guys that there's a system out there that doesn't want you people to breathe by yourselves. This is interesting to me.
No, no, there was logic up till the point that you said it is racialized. So what's the racial angle to it?
Oh, black people steal the land back from white people.
Oh, all right. Oh, okay. No, 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 that's fine. Yeah, no, I can't actually disagree with that because I see what is going on. All this because the United Kingdom, of course, is on that train as well with the United States.
Mhm.
Because a lot of what goes on in Zimbabwe directly impacts on the United Kingdom. We saw that in Uganda when they kicked out the Indians, they all ended up in the United Kingdom,
Oh, Kingdom.
and
Hmm.
yes, and then
And Kenya.
yes, and Kenya as well, and then with what is going, because there's actually a subset storyline going on for somewhat of compensations for the abuses of those supremacism that Mugabe was raging against, taking those lands back and all that. So that is they're still looking to invoice somewhat the Zimbabweans. That is, they're still looking to invoice somewhat some of the historical antecedents of that supremacism to the United Kingdom. So the United Kingdom is caught up in that in this sort of melee as well. But the broader strokes of it is that what is going on in Zimbabwe is is uh, is somewhat of an experimental lab test for what is subsequently going to go on in South Africa, because the stories mirror each other, and ultimately at some point, the South Africans will look to rescue resources from the Boer, all of these sort of things that have been stolen by the Croats and all these elements that have come. So they're trying to template Zimbabwe as a test run to the as the harbinger to what is coming in the future from South Africa. That's my reading of it. I wonder if that's too convoluted and too weird.
Yeah, that's interesting. That's actually a really interesting point there. So, but don't you think this sort of movement will contradict their own anti reparations sort of efforts? Because if that's the case, then people argue, okay, you want these people to repatriate things and pay back, to the Europeans settlers who lost things after they already took it for free. Won't this also make America liable for paying reparations and everything? So this will actually expose them more inadvertently, and I'm not too sure if they are or aren't aware of the effects of sort of pushing for these narratives. But yeah, you're 100% right.
Yeah, but what
Definitely.
they're saying there, what they're saying there, just really expands on what I am saying, because if they template Zimbabwe to perfect that argument, then that argument then transmutes to what you've just said there, the South African because there is somewhat of an underbelly of there's several injustices in the world, and one of the major injustices is is not yet making good the black experience, the African experience, that restitution, that reparation, that acknowledgement, and all of that. And there's somewhat of there's a frisson of that in all of this sort of anytime you see a black white situation, there's always a frisson of that, and when you see an African Western situation, there's always a frisson of that. So that argument is still there, that essentially what is going on in Zimbabwe is somewhat templating that push which is coming for
Hmm.
now, that black question, now that slavery question, now that exploitation question, and now ultimately that restitution resolution. So all of
Yeah,
that is encapsulated in that.
yeah. Now I have a question for you, one man. Are we gonna leave this video up or are we gonna delete it?
How so? How do you mean?
Well, I don't know, man. I don't want sanctions on.
Oh no, no, don't worry. I don't think anyway. I mean, who's
Yeah,
going to
it won't get
sanction?
enough views, right? So it should be fine. Because we have been very
Who's
specific.
going to? So what's the concern though that we're speaking in this manner?
It's too precise. The evidence is too clear. When it's all low IQ babble, nobody cares, right? But when you do a proper presentation, you have all the evidence, case in stone, and again you're producing a narrative too. There is a narrative aspect that we
You
are producing.
let me ask you this question. Kaizo, when you see dark clouds in the horizon, what does that tell you?
It's gonna rain.
Well, there it is. So that question now, that black question is now more so. Because we've gone through the Jewish cusp, which sets the template for the black question. All this restitution, all this endless supporting of the Jewish narrative for reasons of the World War and whatever. But then there's the greatest injustice, a lot of people would say, and you might well say that I'm prejudiced to say this, but the greatest injustice is the injustice vested upon the upon the black people.
That's a good point.
Yeah, but that is the singular yet unanswered most paramount question within the humanity within humanity. So and that cloud is starting to cave in, and a lot of these skirmishes, all this Zimbabwe whatever goes on is, that the Boer, it continues to exploit the resources in South Africa as emancipated as they think they are, having a black man sitting on some throne thinking he's a czar. The whole of the South African economy is still essentially still controlled by these Dutch people that are seized, hold. So a lot of these things still there. And then there's the Arabian, so many questions wrapped around the black space, and a lot of the push to have those questions answered now are becoming more immediate as the black space continues to evolve more into the global space, more into the enlightenment space, and more into the now we want an equitable sort of sorry, stop me if I'm getting too funky.
No, it's okay. But
I think
go
that's
ahead.
where. Yeah, carry on.
Yeah, I wanted to say something kind of interesting here, right? Because some people think I'm an anti-African or anti-black because of how I argue against very specific.
Sorry. Think or no? Some people think or no.
Well, in their mind they know, but well, I say think because it's not very clear. Some people think that I'm an anti-black or anti-African because of how I fight against certain populist ideas that are reverberating around our spaces. For example, the whole Niger, Mali, Burkina Faso seeking freedom, and I thought to myself, this doesn't make sense because they do need France, right? There's no one else to help them, and that's just the reality of it. And also the juvenile belief that just because you're free from France, somehow your economies, your judicial systems, everything will somehow run the right way. I've always had that sort of analysis. However, Zimbabwe is a country which I will say the only thing holding Zimbabwe back from being a great nation is actually sanctions, nothing else. It's kind of interesting that we found a country. It's a very interesting case study. Even within all these sanctions, it's still one of the better off African countries in terms of stability, in terms of all the relative markers. It's still actually doing relatively well for Africa, yet under such heavy sanctions. Meaning, if Zimbabwe was actually free, they would be better than South Africa, right? That is an interesting aspect. And I believe somewhere deep down, right, I do think that America and the West know this, that there is actually a very purposeful stifling of Zimbabwe's success, not just because of the white dominant sort of, you took the land back from the white settlers, but actually from a fearful of a black African nation with a significant population, 15 to 20 million people, that could actually embrace modernity and succeed. This is actually an interesting case study. I think Zimbabwe will be great without sanctions.
Can I disagree with that, Kaizo?
Go ahead.
I don't think there are any parameters for success in Zimbabwe. I'm not sure that apart from having there's somewhat of a food basket, having mastered agriculture and all of that. But in terms of human capital development, I don't think there's especially, and we have a lot of them here in the United Kingdom. So you have a real life observation of them. I don't think there's especially anything especially special about the Zimbabwean human development that threatens anything. No. And I don't think there's anything in terms of ideological thrust, in terms of their worldview, that is especially innovative or unique or peculiar. No. So I don't think South Africa, I don't think Zimbabwe, I don't think it presents anything of anything especially threatening to anything, not just globally, but even not even within the African sphere, but really even within their subsect of the southern space. I think the whole of the Zimbabwean storyline is essentially them trying to get away with crimes of the past and not having to pay for it. So that addressing that question now of the exploitation that that Mugabe flashed up, and then them no and he's now till his death he was trying to invoice that exploitation to the West, and the West trying to get away with that exploitation as a template to other places within the African sphere that they did exploit. So don't try and paint them greater than they are. Zimbabwe, the
So
only two things: girls with big bums and guys with big foreheads. So that's just the only things that
okay.
Zimbabwe has to offer the
So
world.
before we let Jude and Lozi come in, I would like to point out that in 2018, Zimbabwe had $2,261 per person. This is not PPP, purchasing power parity. This is real nominal stuff. Zimbabwe is making more money than Nigeria per person per capita, more than Ghana, more than Kenya in 2018. Right now, it's making similar to it's a bit less, but still the point here is Zimbabwe, despite the sanctions, that's what you forgot there over there, one man, in your speech. Despite the sanctions, they are actually better than most African nations, meaning, logically speaking, if they didn't have the sanctions, you should be able to see a rise. But anyways, Jude, go ahead. Welcome to this show.
Sorry, before today, apologies today, but before today comes in, what propels the Zimbabwean economy? What propels it?
Gold, diamonds, agriculture.
More significantly, agriculture than gold or diamond. They have 10 a million times more gold in Ghana than they have in South Africa, a billion times more in Nigeria, a trillion times more in South Africa. And I've never heard of Zimbabwean diamond before, but I've heard of Zimbabwean agriculture. So it's essentially wholly largely an
You're
agrarian
repeating yourself.
economy.
Well, just
It's
because
an
you think
agrarian
you're
economy.
ignorant.
Where you getting? Can you post your
Hang
link
on.
of your stats one man? Because you're quoting numbers there. Can you please give us the link? Okay, go ahead.
Lozy,
I'm not quoting
Lozy,
numbers.
calm down.
I'm speaking in broad strokes. Broad strokes.
Lozy, calm down. I just wanted to ask Kaizo a question, right?
Go
Kaizo,
ahead.
why does sanctions on Zimbabwe have an? I mean, look, if North Korea was sanctioned by United States and other European countries. How come North Korea doesn't feel the impact of that sanction? Why should
They do.
Zimbabwe
They're a poor
feel?
country, Jude.
Yeah, they are poor countries, but you cannot compare Zimbabwe to North Korea. They are far ahead of Zimbabwe. What I'm saying is,
Wait.
this is
Jude, wait. What do you mean they're ahead? Have you seen North Korea?
no. North Koreans have a better high IQ than Zimbabwe. Come on, man. I mean, Kaizo, sometimes you want to go back and forward. Are you telling me that Zimbabwe with some kind of better education is far better off than a North Korean? Are you? No, come on. It can't be like that. But what I wanted to say is, this is the thing about Africans, right? Now with these sanctions, South Africa is scared doing business with Zimbabwe. Other neighboring countries are scared. Why should we be scared doing business with our own neighboring country because of a sanction put by another country? It just doesn't make sense to us. I mean, come on, man. Like, this is what is causing more problems on the continent. Instead of focusing on your economy, build your neighbor. I mean, help with the things that is happening with your neighboring countries. You are scared doing business with them. Sanctions shouldn't mean anything for Zimbabwe. But if they feel like the sanction is gonna, make them go backward in what they are doing, that's on them, man. Because as a country, a country shouldn't sanction you. You're a powerful country as well. Stand your grounds, do things for yourself, improve on your economy, improve on your agricultural settings, improve on all these things, and stamp your feet down and say you can do it instead of being a dependent. Because only when you're a dependent, then you can feel the impact of sanctions. But if you are independent, then you don't feel it. because you can do it on your own. So man, I'm just tired of all these sanctions and stuff, and all these Europeans telling us what to do, control our economy and stuff like that. This is why I call bigger countries like Nigeria, South Africa, and all these other countries that just do a lot of talking. It's high time you guys start calling these other countries out. Maybe you guys are scared of the interest that is happening in your own country, but bigger countries call other countries out and say, no, this is Africa. We have right to do business with our own people. So I mean, this is all what I can say, man. But sanctions shouldn't mean nothing for South Africa unless they depend on Zimbabwe, unless they depend on American subsidies, unless they depend on America economy, unless their currency is being pegged on American currency. Because I heard they use American dollars in Zimbabwe. So they haven't even figured out to use their own currency. And Kaizo is telling me how they have a better. Come on, Kaizo. I mean,
Well,
these
hang on,
guys
Jude. Hang on,
haven't even.
Jude.
Come on, man.
Hang on, Jude. Then I'll let you come. Then Rosie can continue. See, this is kind of interesting. Now that we have all these information about the Zimbabwean currency and all this stuff, you guys were like, "Oh, they were stupid for printing the money. It's because they printed too much. Printing money will not cripple your economy."
It wasn't the point, but they overprinted money and had more money in circulation than.
Jude, that's not true. That you've been believing the white man's lies. The reason why
No, it's not a white man's lie. You could have $1 billion, a piece of paper in Zimbabwe dollar on the street, man, just to buy a loaf of bread.
The economy already collapsed before that moment. Jude,
but if you are high IQ, America shouldn't be sanctioning your country, and you are feeling the impact of it. That's why one man is telling you that they cannot. I mean, come on, man.
Jude, can I say something? Yeah, Kaizo, your dusty Kenyan Kaizo, man. I heard the other day you were saying Rosie was lying. He didn't want to give me Kaizo, you're dusty, man. No, look, Kaizo, but look. To be honest, to be fair on your side, you're right. I never donated to your channel, so it's easy to reach those conclusions. I still want to donate. I was not lying when I said the banking system that I use now in South Africa, it doesn't do international payments.
Oh, you guys are sanctions. I understand.
Come on,
Kaizo. You're really Zimbabwean. You are Zimbabwean. Now you know the truth. Your bank is
allow me to make my point. Come on, Kaizo, don't be dust. So I still want to super chat. You said you were gonna send me your number. I even dropped my email so that you can send me on the private, like we can even chat on my email. That day I sent my email to you on the private chat, Kaizo. You didn't send me that number because I was gonna try that. And I saw it on online. It's something that I can try, although I haven't done it before. So we can still do it today. But for now, I'm going to Kaizo. Yeah. But for now, I'm gonna be like engaging on these conversations. We can do that along the process.
Okay, afterwards. Okay, that sounds good. That sounds good. Yeah. So we have a couple of panelists. We've got Man of Prestige as well. I wanted to clarify that point, Jude, just before Man of Prestige goes, and then Lozi, and then we'll go.
No,
around.
But I still want to make my point.
Oh, you haven't made your point yet. Go ahead.
Let's hear from Man of Prestige. What point does Lozi have to make that he has not made? It's only going to regurgitate the Bula Balu.
Have you noticed how Nigerians envy us, man? They always say,
envy you? Envy you?
Why you guys have joking me?
All right, go
But
on.
why you guys always have a problem with us? You kind of like envy us, you know? It's weird, man. Why are you always willing to fight with South Africans? Most Nigerians.
Yeah, it's only because you are better looking, richer, and you get better women. That's why we envy you. That's why. The Nigerian envying the South African. Have you ever heard such a thing?
But that's a weird obsession. You guys are obsessed with us. You must stop that. It's not looking good. You guys don't look good when you do that. So, okay, here's the point. I've heard even one man, because he's envious of South Africa. I think there's a jealousy there among many Nigerians. Not all, but there's a bit of jealousy there. Because he was trying to connect.
Sorry, before you go on, what's the basis? What's the basis? No, you still have the floor, but what's the basis of that jealousy?
You spoke a lot alone about my country. Allow me to make my point. You spoke a lot about my country. Allow me to defend my country. Because I don't speak about Nigeria.
Your country. I still want to see your passport because I'm not convinced you're a South African.
Okay, allow me to make my point without you being defensive. Because you spoke a lot here without anyone interrupting you. There was no South Africans, but you had to bring us in. So allow me to make a point. A South African is here finally. Let us speak on behalf of our country. We don't speak about Nigeria, but let me make a point. You are trying to connect the situation that is happening in Zimbabwe somehow with South Africa. There's really no link. We share similar history with many Southern African countries, but there's really no link with what you're trying to say. You're trying to explain your kumbaya African talk, but it doesn't make sense. The economy of Zimbabwe, to begin with, Kaizo, and I'm going to correct Jude, but I understood Jude's point. Jude, if you do a Google search now, you'll realize that the biggest trading partner with Zimbabwe is South Africa. I still think you were making a good point. Many countries are afraid to trade with Zimbabwe ever since sanctions. I still agree with that point. And I think even South Africa is not reaching its full potential in terms of trading with Zimbabwe because of that and that within the sanctions. But we are the biggest trading partner with Zimbabwe. And it's been that for many years. And China is second to us. Now, someone raised a good point earlier on here. They said, why hasn't Zimbabwe been doing trading with the global south, considering countries like China, India, and many Iran, Middle Eastern countries, Russia as well. All these countries that are probably having problems to trade with the West. That's a good question we can all ask ourselves. The leadership in Zimbabwe is one of the big problems, but they are also sanctioned. That's an excuse they can use, which I believe it's harming the economy of that country. But with all that being said, the GDP of Zimbabwe, it's almost equal to the GDP of Kenya, Nigeria, Ghana. I think it's actually more bigger than Ghana. Their GDP this year, as of 2024, GDP per capita is actually more or less equal to the GDP of Nigeria. That is not under sanctions, but Nigeria suffers a problem of big population. But Zimbabwe is not doing that bad. And we can only imagine what they can do when the sanctions are totally removed. Now, something interesting is happening with the current sanctions. They say they've removed Zimbabwe out of sanctions, which I don't know which sanctions. They haven't told us which sanctions. Then they still sanctioned the leadership of Zimbabwe. Probably the politicians in Zimbabwe and the richest people in Zimbabwe are sanctioned. And these are people who are supposed to grow the economy and do the global trade and all that. So in a sense, Zimbabwe is still under sanctions. This is just America trying to look good globally because their name is really tarnished. And South Africa last year, we raised, again, we went to, our president was in Washington, D.C. with our foreign minister, Naledi Pandor. They all stressed on the point that the sanctions in Zimbabwe need to be removed so that Zimbabwe can thrive. When Zimbabwe thrives, South Africa and its neighboring countries benefit, because at the moment, the situation in Zimbabwe is harming countries like South Africa as we experience the influx of migrants. As many African countries that don't function, they tend to run to South Africa, and that is not doing good for our domestic economy as well. The pressure keeps getting high. So as many African countries become stable like Zimbabwe, which is our neighbor, it's very beneficial to the economy and the economic growth of South Africa. Now, moving forward, I ask myself this question. Zimbabwe has been going through under sanctions for more than 15 years. Why didn't the leadership of Zimbabwe sign deals with the organizations like BRICS, OPEC, and many other organizations that are trading globally and thriving? Well, one can say Zimbabwe has been making.
What would be the man?
Can I make my point?
You are speaking, and we're listening aghast. What would be the basis? So hold on, you're still making that point. What would be the basis of Zimbabwe signing a deal with OPEC? On the basis of what?
OPEC is an oil. It's majorly an oil trading group with Middle Eastern countries, some Northern countries, and West African countries like Nigeria. I'm very aware of that. What Nigeria can
repeat these words. No, don't worry about can I
make my point 1 minute?
Don't worry about whatever. Just hold on, guy. Settle down. Repeat these words after me. I know nothing. Repeat those words.
Okay. Let me still make my point. Nothing. I know you envy me. I'm a South African. You obviously envy me. Allow me to finish while you in the background and envious. So Zimbabwe needs to make deals with many other global trading powerhouses so that they could have benefited a lot. Zimbabwe is rich in natural resources
Do
such
you
as
know what sanction means? Do you know what sanctions mean?
Oh Lord, can you behave, bruh? Can you be
No,
civil for once?
It's a dialogue. So settle down, Lozi, just hold on 1 second. Understand the distinction. It is a dialogue, not a monologue. And a dialogue is conversational.
Point, then you will respond. Can I make one point?
You made a million points, none of them cohere with logical sense.
But you were making millions of points here that are not even making sense, and no one interjected you.
You can interject me. I don't object. That's the problem.
I don't think I even want to engage you, bro. I like the IQ, man. I really don't want to engage
you. No, don't worry about the IQ. Just try. I wish
if you can ignore me, then we can all be smooth on the panel. Yeah. You're really sucking me now, bro. It's like you're trying to do all you can, bro. So
let me just tell you this. Hold on. Just wait 1 microsecond. Let it be conversational. It's not a battle. It's not a battle. Yes, oh Lord and oh Christ and Allah and the rest of them. But just hold on. You have to make it make sense. Zimbabwe cannot sign a deal with OPEC because OPEC is all about all oil exporting countries. Can you just hold on 1 microsecond, and then I'll yield the floor back to you. OPEC is all about oil exporting countries, and Zimbabwe doesn't even have a liter of oil. So that's out of the question. And then the sanctions. Sorry. Just hold on. When a Western country imposes, let me make this point so you have a better understanding.
When the dumbest person has got a mic.
Okay. Go on and do. I was trying to rescue you, but don't do
that because you don't listen to what I'm saying. OPEC, it's a group of global trading countries that are strong in trading oil. What I said is that Zimbabwe can join the countries that are in OPEC because these countries are doing well. Zimbabwe needs oil, for example. If Zimbabwe can get more oil, that will actually be good for the country, cheaper oil for the country. What can they trade with countries that are in OPEC? They can give them the resources they have, like platinum. Zimbabwe is very rich in platinum and gold as well, and many other resources. I think they've got uranium as well. Why haven't they joined other global entities that are trading there at the global stage and negotiate deals with them? That's what I was saying.
I can tell you why. If you want to know why, you asked the question. Let me answer.
Don't tell me why, because I was gonna get there. Zimbabwe cannot really do many global transaction payments because the SWIFT system has been the dominating system for the past 20 years, and that's what I was gonna say. Zimbabwe hasn't been able to flourish in that space. The BRICS nations only launched their global paying system last year. That's why you don't even give me a chance to speak. You always have to run mouth to appear smart because you envy a South African. You don't do this when other people speak from other countries. That's your problem.
Okay, but all right. You're talking too much, Rosie. Cut your point off and let someone go ahead and talk, man.
Yes, because we're all keen to hear from Man of Prestige. Because it's better to switch on his camera so that the ladies can enjoy both his good looks and his dulcet tones. And of course, he being a Nigerian, his superior brain as well. But before we say that, actually, let's hear from Man of Prestige, and then maybe I'll educate Lozi afterwards.
Okay. Thank you, everybody. Good morning. It's early here. It's like about 6 a.m. here. But having said that, Kaiser, I greet everybody. Let me make my first comment. This is reference to Judy. Judy, I'm going to give you a couple of advice. When you come to the platform, one-man platform, any Nigerian platform, we don't have any issue about you, condemning the politicians, but don't you dare come and, degrade Nigerians anymore. That's uncalled for. I didn't like it, and we won't do that to Cameroon as a country. So your narrative should be focused on the politician. That's good. So having said that, please take a notice from me. Just an advice from an older brother like me, giving you that advice. We don't adhere to that kind of narrative against Nigeria. We can talk against ourselves, but anybody from a foreigner or wherever, you don't have right to do that. Thank you very much. But having said that,
try to talk about Nigeria, so only Nigerians can do it. Okay, that's okay. That's understood.
No, don't condemn Nigeria. I'm just giving you an advice.
No, I have the right to condemn any African country on the continent. It's my right to do it. I mean, come on, just because you are Nigerian doesn't mean I shouldn't talk about Nigeria. I call any country and talk about it in any platform. That's just it.
Yeah, but Jude, enough people have told you this. Nigerians don't take very well to other people, especially raw meat eating Africans running commentaries on Nigeria.
But do you expect me to back down, one man? Do you expect me to back down? I mean, coming from a Pan-African background, should I back down because Nigerians say I shouldn't talk about their country? It makes no sense. This is what we want Africa to be. If you clamoring for democracy, then you also have to allow people to talk on any country they want to talk. I'm not going to pick and choose which country to talk on and what country not to talk on. It just makes no sense,
all right. Back to you, Prestige.
Having said that, I was just listening. The main reason why I came here, the main reason I came here is to give you the advice. That's my main reason. But I'm just reading about the sanction against Zimbabwe. So it's like a developing story. I've not read the whole thing, so I can't really give much commentary about that, whether USA has a right to sanction them. But my understanding is that they just sanctioned the officials, about 11 of them or so. So, but that's America for you, because in America, there's a lot of human violation or whatever. So they don't really concentrate on what's happening in America, but they only want to, show their power, in that area. I don't really have that much to come in. But anyway, I just want to greet everybody. I'm going to listen because I'm busy right now. I'm not doing something. I'm just I just wake up, so I'm in a coffee place right now because I have to do something. And I greet everybody. But Judy, can you take my advice, which, friendly advice? Okay?
No, I can take your advice. Don't come on Nigerian platform and talk down on Nigeria. I understood, but maybe I can go on other platforms and talk about it. I understood. It makes sense.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Before you go, Prestige, first explain the pink shirt. And then after that, just this Zimbabwean, because I've always seen Zimbabwe as just a satellite little outpost in the southern parts of Africa. Not really likely to amount to anything. But here is Kaiser trying to rebrand it.
But I'm gonna see you tonight. Let me listen, okay? Thank you.
One man, yeah. So you are talking down on Zimbabwe, but no one can talk down on Nigeria. Wow.
So now you understand. So now you get it. So now you get it. That's the Eureka moment. Eureka moment for you. You can talk down on little African countries like South Africa, Zimbabwe, Kenya.
People like one man are not like this. Are not like this in real life. On these channels, that's why he feels important. That's why he does what he does. So it's okay.
No, the fact is that when you go, the fact is that when you go on these Nigerian panels, right? When you talk down on Nigeria, they say, "Hey, don't talk about we are the only people that can talk about our own country, right? Because you're a foreigner." But as long as they come to other channels, they can talk down on these countries, calling them small countries. Like, come on, man. You want to disrespect other countries in Africa, but yeah, you don't want your own country to be disrespected.
Yeah, but it's their projection. I don't even talk about Nigeria because it's irrelevant to me. But they talk about South Africa a lot. But anyway, so yeah, man.
What is happening in Zimbabwe, man? Man, forget about Kaiser. Kaiser went to sleep.
No, I want him to check his email, man. I want him the email, his private email. But yeah, Judy.
Look, but what is happening?
What is happening in Zimbabwe?
I say what is happening in Zimbabwe, man. I don't think those guys can actually build a good economy because, like the one man said, it is the Boers that control that economy. When they left, when their lands were taken and they gave it to the black Africans to run their farms, most of the businesses collapsed. They have to go and beg the Boers to come back and develop the agricultural sector. Right now, you could say it's stable because of the Boer existence right now, but if they actually leave again, the whole economy, including the sanctions, is probably going to turn that country into some kind of a refugee crisis, because even as fertile as Zimbabwe look on the map, you could see. I also heard that they are also suffering from hunger. It seems like some part of Zimbabwe is not fertile at all when it comes to land.
Jude, to be fair on our neighbors, I mean, that's rich coming from one man. Nigerians were on strike three days ago, a hunger strike. They were striking. Zimbabweans don't strike because of poverty to their government. So, I mean, it's rich because Zimbabwe is in I think top 15 or top 20 of richest countries in Africa. When we say Zimbabwe, it's poor compared to what? Because out of 54 countries in Africa, Zimbabwe is actually in top 20. I think the argument should be, can Zimbabwe do better than what they're doing now? I think they've got a greater potential. But let's also not forget that Zimbabwe doesn't have a seaport or a seaport or access to ocean, because I had some funny guy from Zimbabwe called Rutendo being interviewed, and he was trying to come up with this claim that the Western powerhouses want to make Zimbabwe a SADC powerhouse and take the companies from South Africa, out of South Africa to Zimbabwe. Well, first of all, most South African companies are owned locally, and Zimbabwe doesn't have access to the port. If that was true, the Western countries can do that maybe with Mozambique or Namibia. They are in a favorite position to actually replace South Africa using that logic. So South Africa has always been having this privilege in the SADC because we have got access to two oceans, and it's one of the safest regions on the planet. Now that logic doesn't fly.
Let me ask you a question. Should all these landlocked countries in Africa, should they submit to countries that have coastline, or just give up power and join these countries?
Sorry, Lozi. Hold on. Oh, can you hold on? Just hold on, Lozi. Let me just debunk something you just said there. So this is these are the richest countries in Africa. Nigeria, of course. I think you all know that. I'm not quite sure why South Africa is second. They have no economy there. Egypt, Algeria, Morocco, Angola, Kenya, Ghana, Tanzania, Ethiopia. So Zimbabwe, not even anywhere near sight. So try and stick to facts.
What about Cameroon?
Can
Cameroon, is that even a country? Don't be silly.
I said can I speak? I said Zimbabwe. I said Zimbabwe. It's in top 20 richest country in Africa per capita. You see, low IQ Africans, they've got a problem of listening. Listening is a skill. They don't listen at all.
You said top 3. You said top 3. Do you want me to go and get top 20? I bet you Zimbabwe.
I never said top 3. One man, you need your ears to be checked. I never said top 3. Are you crazy? I follow stats every day. That's what I do for a living. Zimbabwe is not in top 3. I said Zimbabwe is in top 3.
Hold on. Let me talk to one man. I just checked the GDP per capita income that was floating all over the place. Nigeria is not number 1. South Africa is number 1 with probably 140. I think 440 something billion GDP. Nigeria only had 300 and something.
No, Jude, let me respond, please, because we have got a problem of not checking stats. One man, that's what.
Yeah, I think he came up with the fake statistics. What is Nigerians they fail to
allow me to speak. Jude.
This point, you speak. I was trying to say that South Africa landmass is bigger than Nigeria landmass. I mean, the only thing Nigeria passed South Africa is in population. That is it. The economy, the infrastructure, South Africa is far better off. Go ahead, man.
And wealth.
Oh, come on. Oh, so population and wealth.
Jude, can we now use? Can I speak from stats, because one man is doing opinions? Like
Lozi, you have to stand your ground and talk firm on these people. You always just make point, but you don't stand your ground. Pull statistics and stand your ground, man.
Jude, I don't. That's the thing. I'm too intelligent to be doing petty fights because I know the truth. South Africa took over Nigeria last month in the biggest economy in Africa. Kaizo, you can check this as well. South African GDP this year, it's 401 billion US dollars. Nigeria GDP is 395 billion US dollars. The third place is Egypt with 350 billion US dollars. These are the richest countries in Africa. If we use GDP, If we use PPP, Egypt is number 1 with 1.3 trillion US dollars. Nigeria is number 2 with 1.1 trillion US dollars. South Africa is number 3 with 850 billion US dollars. If we use GDP per capita, Mauritius is number 1 with more than 30,000 US dollars, followed by Seychelles. Gabon is there as well, Algeria, Botswana, South Africa, Egypt, and other countries, Tunisia as well. If we use total wealth, South Africa is the richest country in Africa by total wealth in the hands of private individuals and citizens, followed by Egypt. The total wealth in South Africa is more than 781 billion US dollars. The total wealth of Egypt is 350. The total wealth of Nigeria is 228 billion US dollars. The problem with Africans is that they don't read, they don't listen, they don't do research. They come here with their half-baked opinions and they want that to present that as fact. Because I don't do research. What I said here, anyone can go and search everything I said here. The numbers will remain the same.
Lozi, do you know that only a minority of Nigerians actually have access to wealth in Nigeria? Maybe 20%. Over 200 and something million population is probably 10,000 people or probably 1 million that can even eat 3 square meals in Nigeria. Come on, man. The GDP per capita income, it tells me that over 180 million Nigerians are in poverty.
Yeah. So of all the African countries, Nigerians is number 1 and Black Americans. Yeah. No other African, not even South Africa, which claim to be the best economy in Africa.
That's in the top 5.
Okay, let's go ahead.
Okay, so we're going to start with the first one. This is Aliko Dangote. His estimated what's his net worth is $13.9 billion.
Correct.
And he has mostly made his fortune from cement manufacturing, flour manufacturing.
This guy didn't make his fortune from cement. Nigeria took their whole economy and gave it on Dangote. That's what happened on Kaizo. Nigerian took their whole economy and put it on Dangote. Even their former presidents invested on Dangote stuff. So when they say he made his money out of cement, that's not true. Nigerian economy, they printed a lot of money, put it in his account, switch it to US dollars, and build his bank account up. That's what happened in Nigeria. That's why he cannot use his own money. How comes? I mean, he's the richest, but yet things are not done in Nigeria. Come on, man.
Today, are you at some point ever going to voice an opinion about your country? Because you have a lot to say about Nigeria, but I don't think on any platform I've ever heard you talk about your country.
We are not talking about Cameroon. We're talking about biggest GDP in Africa.
No. What's your view on Cameroon with your comatose 92-year-old president? Speak on that. What's your view on your comatose, permanently in a vegetative state in Switzerland, 92-year-old president?
Is that the topic? I mean, if it was the topic, that might come in and share.
It's the topic now. What's your view?
Oh, okay.
On your
and then you guys can start talking about it. Yeah, I can come in and join me.
Yes. Okay, so I'm talking about it now. So you tell us, what's your view on your 92-year-old senile president that is in a vegetative state in some convalescent home in Switzerland? What's your view on that?
My view on that.
You are not Nigerian. What's your view on your country?
My view is that this guy is in the same mental home like Telumbu of Nigeria. You know, he goes to France and Pobia in the same hospital. They clean out their blood.
What's your view? What's going on in your country? Are you ashamed of who you are? Well, is this what
Why should I be ashamed? People know that I'm from Cameroon. What the hell are you talking about?
Your country. What's your view on Cameroon? What's going on in your country?
One man.
Igbo, forget Timbumbo or whatever. You are not Nigerian, so it's not Nigeria doesn't impact on your daily life. What impacts on your daily life is your country and your president. So what's your view on that? What's your view on your country?
I'm an American citizen. I have the right to come on.
You're an American citizen. You must be a joker.
Right? I mean, I'm an American citizen, you know, and I'm coming from Ambazonia, so I actually don't know about Cameroon politics, but I know that the president in power is in France in the hospital. The same hospital that he's in is in the same hospital that Tilumbu is in.
How long has he been in that hospital? How long has he been in that hospital?
You should ask Tilumbu. Tilumbu is gonna tell you how long when they made it, how long he was in.
Do you have any view on your own country?
I mean, I'm from Ambazonia. The view that I have
hold on. Let me concede something to you. Nigeria is the worst country on the planet with the worst president ever known. So let's leave that to one side. Let's talk about Cameroon and your president without Timbumbu or Timbondon or Timbuktu. What is your view about your country without referencing Nigeria or her president? What is your view? That shouldn't be difficult. I speak about Nigeria all the time. Lozi never stops speaking about South Africa. Kaizo, he bores us to tears with stories about Kenya, but you never speak about your country. What is your view about your country? Nigeria, you're not a Nigerian. What is your view about your own country?
I just told you that I'm an American citizen, right? You know, coming from Cameroon, I'm still an American citizen, so you have to put that in your mind. And then I'm gonna tell you that my own view.
Citizen. You're an immigrant to America. You're a Cameroonian. That is your
but
country.
Cameroon does not accept.
Cameroon does not accept backdrop.
Cameroon does not accept dual nationality. Cameroon does not.
What is your view about your country, my guy? You are not an American.
I'm telling you. Cameroon does not accept dual nationality.
I don't care about what Cameroon accepts. What is your view about Cameroon? Tell us.
My view.
Without reference to Tinubu or Nigeria, we already know all your views about that. Speak about your own country.
What's view about Cameroon? Oh, okay. Are you gonna let me talk? I talking as an outsider who is not a Cameroonian. My view. Oh, come on, one man. At least maintain some perfect decorums, please. Come on, man. Can't be riotic like that. You know, this is an international platform. So
we want to hear about Cameroon from you, not Tinubu or Timbuktu or Nigeria or Igbo or Inandekan. None of that. All we want to hear about from you. And you're not an American, you're a Cameroonian. So what we want to hear from, I don't care about that. What's your view about Cameroon? That's a direct question. So give a direct answer. What's your view about your country?
Wow. Okay. Now let me talk. The view that I have for Cameroon is the same view I have for all African countries, right? And I believe that none of these countries is progressing based on how they have to progress. None of these countries are doing anything good for their own people. Cameroon. That's what I'm telling you. Cameroon is
hold on. You're always specific.
Oh man, are you gonna let me? Is this gonna be a conversation?
I won't. Let me answer the question. You are always specific. You don't. When you speak about Nigeria, you don't go to the generality of Africa. You insult our president. You insult our people, and you don't broad stroke it. So don't broad stroke. Specifically about your country, not Tinubu, not the wider African space, not you having a dual nationality, not any of that. Your country, Cameroon, and her comatose 92-year-old president. What's your view on that situation? And that's the last time I'm asking you.
Since you want to keep doing repetitive statement, this is it. The failure of Cameroon is as a result of Nigeria. And that's a fact. You can go and check it out with all these insecurity issues. But let me talk on Cameroon as you want me to talk on Cameroon, right? I mean, what my view on Cameroon is, I mean, what do you want me to say? That they have a president who is in there for 40 years?
I want you to speak about it. Do you not have any thought about your country? That's what I want you to say.
Yeah, but I mean, what should I talk about? Like, introduce to you Cameroon or what? Is that what you want me to introduce?
The political situation, the problems that you are contending with your country, not the wider African space. Not how Nigeria is this, that, and the other. Not you having an American, whatever it is. Specifically about Cameroon, your political situation, your comatose president, and the problem that afflicts your country and the solution to it. Cameroon.
What is all this comatose president, commas this, comma this? You know, I mean, come on, man. This is uncalled for, right? But me and you know that Cameroon is in the same shithole country, is a shithole country like other countries in Africa. And you can quote me anywhere. There's just no progress in Nigeria, in Cameroon, in all these countries. You think you are progressing, but we are instead regressing in all these countries. We are not dependent at all. We are not independent at all. We are all dependent. That's why when they put an embargo on one country, no African country can stand up and say, no, let's do this, let's do that. Because we depend on all these people. We have pegged our currencies. Cameroon have pegged their currencies to other countries. So, yeah, man, there's nothing I can tell you about Cameroon. It's just a jungle justice country and all over the place, same like any other country, man. So, if that's what, there's a crisis that is happening between the Ambazonians and the Francophones. You know, that is from Ambazonia. We want an independent country. And that's all what I can talk about, you know. I'm not involved in what is happening in the Francophone side of Cameroon. I'm more interested in where I'm from, Ambazonia. So that's it, man. But Nigeria has to pick up their stuff and put things together, man.
No.
Because
Just leave Nigeria.
The importation of crimes that is coming in from Nigeria into Cameroon is also causing a lot of problems in Cameroon.
Yeah. So
that.
Let Cameroon beef up her security to fend against that.
How can they do that when the border goes from all the way to the north to the south?
You're at least you pretend to be, I won't say you are, but you pretend to be a sovereign country. So act like one, even if you can't be one. So people tire of this, you hopping from platform to platform, Timbuktu.
Why should I be hopping from platform? I'm a Pan-Africanist. We go everywhere and make our speech and people listen to us.
Cameroonian. So let's just hear occasionally about your country.
No, I only come in only when they talk about Cameroon.
Nigerians know the problems with their country. They don't really need all you ever do is to echo what Nigerians already know about their country.
Exactly. So why do they get mad when I echo the same thing that they already know? Why do they get pissed off?
So bring something new into the conversation by speaking to something that you do know, which is your country, Cameroon, and the problems that afflict you there.
Why do people get pissed off?
Lozi is always speaking about South Africa. Kaizo is always speaking about Kenya. Man of prestige never stops Nigeria.
Are you gonna let me to also ask you a question? Do you know the difference between a Pan-Africanist and an egocentric person? An egocentric person is a person that speaks only their own country. A Pan-Africanist or a person that knows Africa speak about African countries as a whole. So that's the difference between me and you.
Do you know the difference between somebody? Do you know the definition of somebody with a low self-esteem and low worth? Is that person looking over the picket fence into somebody else's garden?
So you're gonna tell me I have no self-esteem to talk on
your garden? Never mind how untidy my garden is. Go and mow the lawn in your own garden first, so that when your garden is looking pristine, then you can then run comment on how untidy my garden is. Everybody tenable. Every tenable. You have a 99-year-old president. Your country is the worst basket case in the whole of West Africa. But,
wow, really? Wow. Are you kidding me? Can Nigeria host the African Nations Cup? You forget that Cameroon hosts Nations Cup, right? Oh, did he leave? You forget that Cameroon hosts Nations Cup?
I didn't leave, but
okay.
Get back to the Zimbabwean conversation.
Go and check one stadium in Cameroon. Maybe you can construct like 5 cities in Nigeria. Put that in mind. You know, one stadium in Cameroon that was built to construct 5 cities in Nigeria. But let's forget about.
All right. Fair enough. Let's just abandon that, because I think the audience really want us to go back to to
Yeah,
the
but one man, let me say something, right? Make
no,
Cameroon a topic. Yeah, let me just tell you something. Make Cameroon a topic on one of your discussion. I might come in and say something. But when
no,
people just
you
come
make
in and
Cameroon a
interrupt,
topic. You are not a you are the nobody is interested in Cameroon enough to make it a topic. But you are the Cameroonian. But let's bring Lizo back or Loze back in. And Loze, do you think that Zimbabwe is so far gone that it should just be subsumed by South Africa as a outpost colony? Loze.
One man, I was on a business call, man. I run construction company this side, so I'm not always available. But I was listening. Can you repeat? It's just that your voice was very low because I was talking to important people this side, people who make money. So can you repeat what you were saying?
Yeah. Oh, all right. I'll pretend like as though I didn't get that as a big remark. But
okay,
I was saying that I was saying that do you think that Zimbabwe is such a basket case that it should be subsumed by South Africa as a colony outpost?
Man, hey, these dusty questions, man. Look, I don't know what to say. Zimbabwe, it's an okay country, man. I want Zimbabweans to thrive and do their own thing and live in their country. That's all I want for Zimbabwe. I don't want them to not thrive and be well because half of their population is gonna run to South Africa, and I don't like that. So I don't want Zimbabwe to be under South Africa or any country to be under South Africa. I want anyone to manage their own country and stay there in their country. They can come to South Africa for holidays. I can come to their country for holidays. They can come to South Africa looking for better jobs that have got rare skills. I can go to their country as well and transfer skills. That's all I want for the rest of Africa, including Zimbabwe. I don't want all these Nigerian supremacy and all that. I don't have those, and I don't have that vibe, man. I don't have that energy. You guys are leaders. Nigerians are strong. They lead Africa. That's you guys. You guys must oppress all African countries under your leadership. Power to Nigerians. Nigerians are the most powerful people on earth. They actually the richest people. So no, actually Zimbabwe should be under Nigeria. One man. What do you think about that?
No, I don't think Zimbabwe should be under Nigeria, but just in terms of projection to the rest of the world, I wouldn't object to the rest of Africa coming under Nigeria's lead, but still with the Zimbabwean space, I've never really acknowledged any economy in Zimbabwe outside of the agrarian economy. So the narrative that Kaiser was trying to flesh out earlier on, that they pose some sort of African superpower emergence that the rest of the world is trying to stifle. I didn't really buy into that narrative because really, I don't see anything outside of just agriculture in Zimbabwe, and I don't see that agriculture portends any threat to anything.
One man, are you aware that Zimbabwe has got a better infrastructure than Nigeria? I think you underestimate Zimbabwe, brother. Have you ever looked at Zimbabwe? They're not doing that bad.
In what though? Because the last time I checked Zimbabwe, they used to park their currencies in a wheelbarrow just to go and buy a loaf of bread. So it's like a collapsed. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, well, man, you love Nigeria, man. I think you are. I've never met a Nigerian who love Nigeria like this. Look, that's right. You're right about that one. Zimbabwean currency, it's a mess, But I mean, even Nigerian currency, one man. Let's be honest. Your currency. I mean, you're the last person to speak on currencies, man. Come on, one man. I'm really trying to not be on this thing of bashing other African countries.
I mean, Nigerian currency is declining at a rapid rate. I mean, 1,000 CFA in my country is like 50,000 naira. Are you kidding me? Like, what? I mean, now we carry Nigeria money in Cameroon in basket. Come on, man. I mean, Nigeria should be the last people should be talking on this panel, bro. You know.
Yeah, and Jude, to make one point, I don't think we should be laughing at Zimbabwe currency like how
Exactly.
the 1 minute, because we know how they
go. Not taking Nigerian currency is going down that same line.
Yeah, and these are all sanctions. You know, same problem in Nigeria. It's all man-made. You know, they impose it. There's certain ways they do to manipulate our currencies. And Zimbabwe, unfortunately, the case of Zimbabwe, I don't know about Nigeria, but the case of Zimbabwe, it's printing more money with an economy that is not manufacturing anything.
Come to find out, this guy was talking about how Zimbabwe economy depends. Do you know that Nigerian economy depends on is being pegged on U.S. economy? I mean, even their currency, you know, is being pegged. It means the United States control them. You know, I mean, so when people come here and say, "Oh, we are independent," there's no African country that is really independent, because I mean, your whole economy is run by the Americans and the Europeans. You know,
that's a good point. Can I say something that many people are not?
Sorry, can I say this, and maybe you can pick it up, like, so can you name one economy that is not pegged to the dollar?
The rand is not pegged to the dollar. Our currency.
There you go.
Really, how do you value your currency?
Oh, okay. In terms of value, of course, because the dollar is a global currency. Let me just explain further. It's a very interesting topic. I think our currency is not pegged to the dollar on paper, because our reserve bank, it's 51% owned by foreigners, and probably the Western foreigners. So yeah, on paper we do look like we've got an independent currency, but that currency is printed by a bank, a reserve bank that is largely owned by the Western shareholders. And to raise one point about Zimbabwean Reserve Bank is 100% owned by the Zimbabwean government. Our Reserve Bank, 51% is owned by foreigners. Now, here's the most interesting part. The Reserve Bank of Zimbabwe, it's collapsed. It's really, there's no capital. There's no serious flowing of capital that can compete, that can create an economy that can compete. Whereas the Reserve Bank of South Africa, it's a compromise, right? It's a compromise. We compromised where the foreigners have got large influence and ownership in our Reserve Bank, but the economy is active. In this world, I guess what I'm trying to say is that you have to pick the devil you're dealing with and see how you can survive. I guess our leaders were like, okay, if we nationalize 100% of our Reserve Bank, this and this is going to happen. And it is the situation that we have now. I'm not proud of it, but it is what it is. Do we have a better economy in terms of using African standards? Yeah, it's better to be black in South Africa in terms of living standards. Should we own 100% of our Reserve Bank? Yeah, I think we should. But that's not the case at the moment, you know.
Let me just say this: every currency known is tethered to the American dollar, because the American dollar is the conduit for international trade, and whenever you're looking to trade, even between, let's say, as close a relationship as Togo and Nigeria, which are just a border apart. The determination is always relative to the dollar. So you determine that trade, Nigeria currency relative to the dollar, Togo currency relative to the dollar, and that establishes that trade. So I'm not quite sure what point Judith thought he was making, but every currency is tethered to the American dollar.
Okay, 1 minute. Let me make this point to support Judith's statement and how he is viewing it. Like Ghana, especially Ghana, their currency is pegged to the dollar. Zimbabwe's got the same problem. They actually using our currency and the dollar. They actually don't have currency anymore. And similar situation to Nigeria. Although I must say this, last time I did my research, not all Nigerian assets and commodities were pegged to the dollar, but a good large portion of it is. South Africa, what makes our currency very powerful, and this is something that many people are not aware of. Our currency is not even the most valuable in Africa. I think it's number 8 or number 9. But currencies are more powerful when they tend to dominate in trading space. So the rand is used in Africa and probably a little in the international space. I think the rand is the only currency that is trading internationally out of Africa, from Africa. And I think we're holding 1.4% of the global assets. That's the only thing that gives rand a sense of relevance. But 1.4% is still nothing. At the end of the day, I believe even our currency is actually influenced by the dollar. When the dollar gets stronger, our currency get weaker, if I may say, and similar to almost all African currencies. That's the situation. Unfortunately, the global powerful countries that dominates trade will have a dominating currency. And I don't think that's what we must be thriving for or judging other African countries based on just that system. My judgment on Zimbabwe is based on this. Why hasn't the leadership of Zimbabwe been making deals with other countries, like how Venezuela and North Korea has been surviving? I mean, to be honest, North Korea on average is doing better than the Zimbabwe, and they've got a better development than Zimbabwe. Russia is under the West sanctions than Zimbabwe, but I wouldn't compare Russia with Zimbabwe. Russia, it's an empire. It's actually a subcontinent. It's not a country. They are very educated. They can actually sustain themselves. Zimbabwe, even if though they have a good percentage of a fertile soil, they don't have that level IQ. They're not sophisticated. They don't have manufacturing. Actually, no African country does. In position of South Africa, we benefited a lot from the Western machineries and having the whites here. That's just me being honest there. No African country actually has got capabilities to be productive on or manufacture as compared to any country, be it in the West or East Asia. It's unfortunate, and then we end up in a position where we are with an inferior currency and poverty.
Let me ask you this question, Lozi. Is the South African currency is it subsidized? Who determines the value of it? Is the better question. Who determines the value of the South African currency?
Yeah, it's look, it's the same Reserve Bank I was telling you about, which is like more than 51% owned by foreigners from across the world. But I will tell you, most of them are Western people or the Jewish. But at the end of the day, it's also our manufacturing capacity, right? It's about what we export and import. I mean, what we export compared to what we import, that also makes our currency strong. So what you find with South Africa is that we have been getting weaker as well ever since 1994. I mean, we used under Mandela, we were trading at 3 rand to 6 rand. Thabo Mbeki, we got at 10 rand to 12 rand. Zuma, the big-headed guy, made things worse. Ramaphosa is also not helping that much. It is a phenomenal situation across Africa. Our currency today, we are just slightly under 20 rand to $1. So it's really not helping that much. So you look at the issue of ESCOM that we have, which is harming our production as well. We're still holding on, but I wouldn't say we're performing at the level we should. Just like I will think Nigeria with oil, you should be benefiting more with oil. Unfortunately, under circumstance that Nigeria is, you're not performing at your best level. So it is something like that.
All right. The point I was really looking to drive to is that the South African currency, by the way, is the exchange rate, the relationship of the South African currency with the rest of the international space is determined by the South African Central Bank, whatever form that is. So yeah. Yes, it is determined by that. So what that tells you then that the South African rand is a defended currency. And when a sovereign state defends its currency, it essentially subsidizes its currency. So the relationship of the South African rand to the American dollar, which is the international standard, it is not a true reflection of market forces. It's a reflection of a politicized stance by the South African state to defend their currency to maintain its value. So that chasm between between free market determination and subsidization by a sovereign state is invoiced to the state. So you South African taxpayers, you are paying heavily in tax to defend your currency. So let's juxtapose that with the Nigerian situation. Nigeria has and by the way, Egypt just over the last 2 days have decided to follow the Nigerian example, but we'll get to that in a moment. Nigeria has decided to throw its economy in the air and let market forces determine the value of that currency. So what that determination is an ongoing battle at the moment, and what we're finding is that corruption, vested interest, shysters, opportunists, and all of that, they are attacking that experimental space, which the Nigerian Central Bank is battling against. So that is why you are seeing this very sharp chasm, sharp fluctuation in the Nigerian currency. So this is the Nigerian currency now trying to establish its true value, just dependent on demand and supply market forces, completely devoid of government interference. And I'm not quite sure if that is a global unique first, but that is the Nigerian experimentation. And the Egyptians, I'll just land this, just two more minutes. And the Egyptians, just over the last 2 days, they've decided to hop on board with that Nigerian experimentation to throw their currency in the air as well and let market forces determine its true value. So it's a bit of a misnomer to draw parallels to say that this currency is strong because it's being subsidized by the state, and this currency is weak because it's been determined by market forces. The true value of your economy is what market forces, is this experimentation that Nigeria is embarked upon.
Okay, let me say one thing that I could have misunderstood you, and I still think I'm not well versed in understanding you and the language of economics. I don't come from the background of economics, to be honest. So there's a bit of knowledge or terminology that I might fall short from. I come from the background of architecture. So here's my point. South Africa is a free-floating currency. That's one thing I know. How to go in depth of explaining all that and how we entirely manage our currency, I haven't went into like a fully equipped knowledge around it, but I know for a fact that we have a free-floating currency as to the dollar. That you can Google that as well and check. Maybe you might even understand it better. But I hear what you were saying. Look, maybe did you do economics as a background? Like, are you coming from a background of economics, one man?
No, I'm just coming from the background of an extremely clever, or you are laughing man.
Oh, Nigerians are the most clever, smartest people on earth. That one, it's given. And they the richest people, you know. The especially Nigerian men, they're the most intelligent creatures out there. I give you that one. Yeah, no, I heard you loud and clear. I don't know if you still have got another question. 1 minute.
No. You know, I think there should be somewhat of a synergy between because there are big hubs within the African geographical mix. In your southern region, for instance, your country will probably be the big hub of that space. And then in East Africa, it's very, very difficult to determine who the big hub is because there's so many big nations. But it's a toss-up really between Ethiopia,
Kenya and Ethiopia,
which is a very traditional country, but Kenya, which is a very futuristic country. But you probably want to go with the futurism of Kenya to seize hold of that sub-region. And then, of course, in West Africa, I mean, we all know who the leader there is. I think there should be somewhat of a synergizing between these big spaces, the leaders of those big spaces, in order to form a cohesive sort of especially Black African experience. I'm leaving North Africa out because I see them more as Arabs than anything else. But I think there should be somewhat of a cohesion rather than you railing against Nigerians all the time. I think you should come into an engagement of some sort of synergizing for that unique Black voice.
But one man, you're projecting. I hardly talk about Nigeria or even offend you guys. It's always you guys who, if I call in, you kind of like start to attack me from the go, which is very weird. You know, you don't have to always be on attack mode. When I mean, I don't wake up and think of Nigeria or Nigerians. I just think of the whole continent if I have to. I don't see Nigerians or any other country in Africa being special or any of that. So I don't have any propaganda or resentment towards you guys. But quite often, like even today, I called in. You started to just, throw in words towards me, very shady and all that. I mean, I just avoid that. I do like that happens every.
You know what it is, Lozi. I think you listen to me with prejudice. You listen to me in anticipation of an attack. Even though when I'm trying to be conversational with you, you are already on the defensive. I'm not suggesting some sort of South African inferiority complex, but that's something I have noticed.
Yeah, well, look, at the end of the day, I don't call in and start to throw demeaning words towards you guys. But if you're going to deny that that's what you do intentionally, then that's something else. But for me, I don't even take that serious. You can continue to do that, man. I mean, if it gives you pleasure, but I don't take that serious. That's one thing you should know. But don't twist it. Don't then say I'm the one who's doing that. Well, I'm not. I don't call in and start to throw some unfond words towards Nigerians and then just say most weirdest shit towards you guys. I don't call in and discuss you guys. Actually, when it's a topic about your country, I avoid it. I don't call in and discuss other countries. If it doesn't concern me or my country, why should I get involved?
Let me ask you this: you're South African. Are you black?
Yeah. Come on, my accent is a black. When have you ever had white or Indian people in South Africa speak? They don't have this accent. So my accent is a typical South African accent.
To be honest with you, the only South African I know is Miriam Makeba. I don't really pay much attention to that space.
Oh, come on, man. Come on.
Yeah, no. The sum total of my South African knowledge was during an African festival in Nigeria, where they brought this theater group called Mputombi or something like that. And that's the broad strokes of, Nigerians are very insular. They don't really pay attention.
What is the name? Because you always try to pronounce it.
Mputombi or something like that.
I think it's a Zulu word, man. It's called
yes. Yes, that band, that's the one thing. And the other thing I know about South Africa is Mboboti. Because I know, like the Germans, they like to drink a lot.
Who, the Germans?
And I said, like the Germans, South Africans like to drink a lot. And their preference is Mboboti.
One man, you are the enemy of stats. If you check stats, Nigerians are above us in the most drinking country in Africa. Do you know that? You can check that. You guys are above us.
But Nigerians can handle a drink better. That's just the wider point.
Okay, yeah. I said Nigeria. Earlier on I said Nigerians are superior than any group. I think you guys are the strongest people. You guys are like out of this world. I think you guys come from.
Forget about us, there, Lozi. Don't go so deep into it. Don't give them that accolade, man. Come on.
No, Jude. I mean, Jude. You know what we do to a little guy in South Africa? We allow a little guy to be hallucinating, and we make him believe what he wants to believe. I mean, that's just what we do in South Africa. We feed your ego. We feed your own ego.
But Lozi, what do you make of the current goings on in South Africa, which seems to be at somewhat of a crossroad? Because of course, you are coming outside of the white hegemony, that apartheid sort of thing, into a black governance, and that doesn't seem to be working quite well. I think you're actually starting to experience epileptic electricity distributions now. The infrastructures are starting to cave in. Countless stories of what's that last one? Is it under the throat of corruption allegation? So, what future do you see for that country because of course
South
it looks as
Africa.
though the black governance cannot quite handle what is being handed over to them by these Dutch people that you kicked out.
Okay, look, I mean, sometimes you're gonna have to believe what you believe as a one man. You live in Nigeria. I don't think what you believe is much relevant to our lives. But anyway, just to give you a reality of our lives and how it is. I was born just right at almost at the end of apartheid, so I wouldn't say I've experienced much in terms of how it was living during apartheid. And I grew up in the small village of South Africa. But what I can tell you is that I remember how our village used to look like. Life in South Africa is much, much better today. Maybe not for the white people because they had a better life during apartheid, but it's definitely better for black people in South Africa than ever before. However, we still have got serious issues that we need to deal with. I think ANC has been the best government, not only in South Africa, but in Africa, because ANC is the African government that has opened its borders and hosting large communities of African migrants and other migrants from Middle East Asia than any country in Africa. People who came here looking for jobs, some people fled wars in their countries, refugees and all that, and some people fled LGBT laws and all that. So for like freedom and better living standards. Is South Africa the best country on earth? Maybe not even in Africa, because we have got Mauritius and Seychelles, which are doing better than any African country. But what I can tell you is that South Africa has got more opportunities than any country in Africa in terms of making a thriving career. South Africa is like a USA. USA doesn't have the best living standards in the world. But people know that if you are in America, you stand a better chance to get better opportunities if you're pushing your career. So South Africa is that country on the continent that even other artists from across Africa, you see them, sometimes they do come to South Africa to perform or even to start their careers. We have got many engineers.
But they go around all African countries to perform. But let me ask you this.
Allow me to make a point. You asked about my country. I'm trying to give you a picture of yes. So South Africa has produced the biggest middle class in Africa ever since from 1994, and I'm talking about a black middle class. So black people have got the largest middle class in South Africa and across Africa. But in South Africa, it's also because if you compare us to other races, our numbers are way more than them. So per capita, no, we are not near white people or Indians in terms of a middle class. We also have produced the richest blacks in Africa in the past 10, 30 years or 28 years of democracy. You can look at the millionaires. We have got the largest black millionaires in Africa. Although we have produced one black billionaire who's not even doesn't have 4 billion US dollar. But what is interesting is that that black billionaire is the first black billionaire in Africa, across Africa. You have got people like Aliko Dangote, who's doing very well, extremely well. He surpassed him in probably 10 years. Dangote became the richest black man on earth. But if you look at the distribution of wealth in Nigeria, it's not even close to South Africa if you look at the wealthy black people. And the other thing that South Africa is thriving on, our infrastructure.
Let me just inject this.
You spoke about our infrastructure.
No,
hold on. Let me correct you on our infrastructure. Our infrastructure.
Okay, go on.
Can I say something about our infrastructure?
Yeah,
our infrastructure, it's not collapsing per se, but it's also struggling. And ESCOM, you are right. ESCOM is struggling. We can never maybe a whole topic because it's very complicated. But yes, it's struggling. It's not performing like previous. The problem with our infrastructure is that the previous infrastructure was built for 10%. And after 1994, we quickly tried to stretch the infrastructure to accommodate everyone. So we are still trying to build faster, looking at the numbers. But our infrastructure is still the best in Africa, if we be honest. But yeah, carry on.
Exactly. Including you cannot compare the time when the Europeans were rolling with the time now. Population have increased. A lot of immigrants have come in and all of that. Before that, there wasn't no immigrants, so the electricity that was produced was meant for a small group of population. Now, yeah, so it has increased.
Let's not label that. So sorry, hold on, Jude. Let me just inject a bit of fact into the fabled narrative Lozi just earlier on. This is the African middle class. It says geographically, middle class levels vary a great deal across African countries. North Africa has the highest, Tunisia has the highest concentration at almost 90%, followed by Morocco, 85%, Egypt, 80%. But a significant number of these belong to the floating category with a strong danger of falling into poverty due to economic shock. So the highest middle class is in North Africa. But let's come to Black Africa. Other countries with high percentage of middle class include Gabon, Botswana, Namibia, Ghana, Cape Verde, Kenya, and South Africa. So I don't actually. It says countries at the bottom end include Mozambique, Madagascar, Malawi, Rwanda, Burundi, Liberia. So South Africa nowhere near the top of the pyramid, not in the wider African space, not even in the Black African space. So
but Nigeria is not on it.
Into what?
Can I correct you, one man? No, one man. Can I correct you when it comes to stats, because you need to be careful. There, if you look at the stats, it's talking about percentages. That's per capita. Tunisia, as I said earlier on, their GDP per capita is higher than South Africa. If you look at Botswana, Gabon, Algeria, and Tunisia, only Algeria and Tunisia in the north, they've got a large capita than us. When it comes to Morocco, something special is happening about Morocco. Morocco, if you're working in Morocco, like as a career person, you are going to be paid more than in anywhere in Africa. That's just what the stats are showing. But if you look at the middle class, not per percentage of the population, but just the middle class across, South Africa has got the biggest number. To confirm what I'm saying, you can also look at our national budget. We have got more than 148 billion annual national budget that is under the hands of our government to service our country. And this is coming from taxpayers. That's the amount of volume we take from our taxpayers. If you look at a country like Egypt, which has got 2 times our population, their annual national budget is only $60 billion, which is not even half of our national budget that we pay tax to our government. This tax is coming from the middle class. You look at Nigeria, which has got 4 or 5 times population than ours. Your annual national budget is less than $40 billion. So the government is collecting that from the strength of a middle class. It is that I'm not talking about middle class in terms of percentage. Yes, per capita, no. I think even Botswana has got a bigger middle class volume than us. If we look at, we take the population and divide it by the middle class. I'm talking about overall, which is like what the stats that most Nigerians like to use when they look at GDP. You don't consider the fact that you've got 250 million people. You just say you've got a bigger population, which is GDP. And even this year, you are no longer the leader. So numbers always play a role. So that's why they put in percentages there. They're looking at middle class per capita relative to the population.
Oh, okay, let these numbers play a role. Different set of statistics for you, Lozi. This is African countries with the highest gross domestic product per capita: Seychelles, Equatorial Guinea, Gabon, Mauritius, Botswana, and South Africa. So even in the pyramid that you've...
But I did say, one man, you don't listen. I did even name these countries as the top countries. I even said Mauritius and Seychelles are probably the richest countries in Africa. When I said I don't think South Africa it's the most thriving country in Africa in terms of...
So you don't top any pyramid. You don't top any pyramid in Africa. You don't have the largest...
Where is Nigeria on the list? Where is Nigeria?
One man, you don't listen when I speak. I even mentioned these countries earlier on. I said Mauritius, Seychelles, Gabon. I mentioned these countries, Botswana. Even now, just 2 seconds ago, I did even mention Botswana in my mention now. I said Botswana, if we take their middle class divided by population, they will probably appear higher than us. I don't know what language I should use, one man.
When you go to one-man platform, you'll be calling these countries small countries.
Maybe use Yoruba, I'll understand better. But just the wider point I was looking to, the wider point that I was looking to make, Lozi, is that in any metric of measure, South Africa does not top anything, even within the African space.
Even Nigeria does not top as well. Where is Nigeria?
Economy, it has the largest population, so it tops those spaces.
One man, can I tell you what we top at so that you can, because you are very selective. I never said we are number one in GDP per capita. That's crazy. We are always number 7
Yeah,
or
but
6.
I'm saying you are not number one in anything, is what I'm saying.
Let me tell you what we are number one on. We are number one in road connection in Africa, and our road network.
Mboboti.
Allow me to finish. Because when you start to be defensive and use words like that, you are just trying to be defensive. You don't want to listen to me because I'll bring in facts. So allow me to speak if we're going to engage. South Africa is the leading country in Africa in road network. We are not only leading in Africa, we are home to 30% of road network in Africa. That means South Africa has got more paved roads than probably the entire West Africa or East Africa. And again, South Africa has got more total wealth in the hands of private citizens and the state, more than the entire West Africa put together. You can actually Google and check these figures I'm giving you, one man. You can see them. We are leading in total wealth in the private hands, in the private citizens and government. Another thing, South Africa is leading in universities. Out of 10 best universities in Africa, 7 of them are coming from South Africa. And another state, South Africa is leading in the richest cities in Africa. Out of 10 richest cities in Africa, 6 of those cities are from South Africa. Number 1 being Johannesburg, number 2 being Cape Town, number 3 being Cairo, number 4 is Lagos, number 5 is Durban, number 6 is Nairobi, number 7 is Luanda, number 8 is Pretoria, number 9 it's another city in Cape Town called, it's in Western Cape. I forgot the name of it, Stellenbosch. Number 10 is Accra from Ghana. So the South Africa, and you look at other many other variable things that we are leading Africa in terms of exports. We are the largest exports in Africa. Imports, we are the largest imports in Africa. We are the leading manufacturer in Africa. We are the most industrialized and a diversified economy in Africa.
All right, hold on, because hold on, Lizo. Let me just fact check you, because I'm fact checking you as you're rattling it off, but you're going at greater speed than the fact checks itself. So let me bring you this in terms of infrastructure development in Africa. You're nowhere near you're near the top, but you're certainly not topmost. Seychelles, Egypt. Hold on now. Seychelles, Egypt, Libya, and South Africa. So
one man, you need one man, please.
But in terms of university, hold on. Let me just make this last point.
One man, when it comes to infrastructure, I think we should concede to the South Africa, please. We don't need
that they are better than Nigeria, but not that they are better than Nigeria. No, we're talking about best in Africa, not better than Nigeria, but best in Africa.
One man. When I will disagree on that, and I'm someone who follows stats, and you can engage me on that. I'm gonna be biased. I'm gonna be very, very biased. I'm sure Seychelles is based on percentage index per HDI.
How many of these countries can hold the World Cup, one man? How many of these countries at the top can hold the World Cup? Come on,
There's
man.
none. They can't. That's what I'm gonna decide. Like Egypt, I don't think Egypt even come close to South Africa. Libya, come on, guys. Let's be. If it was
Egypt,
don't even come close, man.
Egypt is all desertic. Come on, man.
So this is very questionable. But I would say they
versus your opinion. So which one should we hold? Hold on. Just one second. Lizo, just 1 second. Which one should we hold as true? Data versus your opinion. Which one should we hold?
No, it's fine. Okay, let's follow data. The data is correct. Let's just follow the data. I wouldn't want to disagree with the data. That's fine. But South Africa hosted World Cup. I don't think Egypt or Libya or Seychelles can. But let's carry on. And South Africa hosted not only FIFA World Cup. We hosted Rugby World Cup. Many times we hosted WWE Raw. Many times we also hosted Cricket World Cup. We hosted almost all events you can think of. We hosted more events than UK. But
one man, can you check the poverty capital in Africa? Let's see who is at the top. One man, are you there? One man. Did he fled the scene?
Okay, but I mean, these topics are like, I don't know what I don't know what to achieve with this.
Lizo is just to sorry, Nigerian first. Lizo is just to inject some actual facts into all of these prejudiced opinions that we regurgitate just for reasons of nationalistic fervor.
Okay.
You know,
okay,
so I admire your love for your country, but it does not cohere with facts and logic.
Look, one man. Here's one thing. South Africa, I've never made a claim that South Africa lead number one in everything. But what is what is special about South Africa? It's one thing, and I have to speak for my country because you guys do speak good about your countries. I have to speak good about my country, especially when it's fact. South Africa appears in many top 10 ranking in Africa for positivity, for development, more than any African country. We appear more than even Egypt, Morocco, Mauritius, and Seychelles, like in top things. When you talk about wealth, when you talk about education, when you talk about sports, when you talk about entertainment, when you talk about infrastructure, all this, even political, we appear more than other African countries in all those rankings in top 10 or top 5. You're going to see us. We appear. That's just a fact. Am I saying we are number one in everything? No, it's nearly impossible. And I'm happy to see other countries be number one there. I mean, why should we always be number one? I'm open for competition. Competition is good.
Lozi, I have a message for you from the Nigerian president, but you have to tune your ears to a northern English accent so you can understand what's being said. So tune your ears. Just hold on. Tune your ears to a northern English accent and then hear this message from the Nigerian president.
Excuse me, Sport. I hope you don't mind me interrupting, but I couldn't help noticing that we appear to be considerably richer than you.
So that's the Nigerian president right there. Did you hear what he said?
The white man. The white man is the Nigerian president.
We are considerably richer than you. So that's what he said.
I believe you, one man. I believe you.
I couldn't help noticing that we appear to be considerably richer than you.
And there it is right there. We are considerably richer than you.
I give you that one. I believe you, one man. You are richer than us.
Sorry, that was just a joke, an aside joke, by the way. But, yeah.
What happened to Judy?
I don't know. I think maybe it dropped, but I think Nigerian First wanted to come in. Nigerian First.
Just here to listen because I will not argue with Leslie because I've given them because of what they did for Palestine. So I said throughout this year I'm not going to criticize South Africa. So I will just keep quiet and listen. No more critics.
No.
South Africa.
What Nigeria, man? Look, look. Let me say one thing. I'm sorry to cut you off. You should give us more props for fighting for Congo, man. It's an African country, man. I don't know if we're fighting for the right thing there, but at least
I agree. See. Let me tell you something. I like the stand your country took, which is for the interests of black, let's say brown and black people. You understand me? It was the best decision.
I hear you.
The reason why our leaders like to play neutrality, I don't like it. I think Nigeria should have taken a stand on Congo and Palestine because we can't just watch and sit down and watch mighty country pass on a small. It's not even a country because they occupy the country, so it doesn't make sense. It doesn't sit well with me. If Palestinians were a different country on their own, I would have just forget about it. But this one, they are still occupying the country, so it doesn't sit well with me at all.
Okay,
let me jump in and then you wrap it up. Only to join Nigerian First in applauding South Africa. I don't know their stance on Congo. I'm not following that space. But their stance on the goings on in Palestine is quite a masterful. Just 100% round of applause. Because they broke ranks with the rest of the world and said no, this is not right, and we will not accept it. So a full applause for South Africa for that.
Okay, but let me make my points clear. I only stand proud on that as well because Palestine, they did support us like many other countries during our tough times. I don't think Middle Eastern countries care about us as Africans, to be honest. But I only respect Palestine because the leadership of Palestine under the leadership was Yasser Arafat. He did actually help funding ANC in many ways. So I only think they also supporting them based on that. Historically, they did come to our support when we needed it. Other than that, I think I wouldn't say it's the best move. South Africa is a small country compared to this. Even Israel, we can't stand near Israel. You know, they're very powerful military and they've got a global influence. I don't blame Nigeria for not having a mouth in the issue of Palestine. Look, Nigeria has got more than 250 million people. A country that has got an economy to grow. The leadership of Nigeria is like, let us focus on our internal issues. The only place I was disappointed was when they were trying to not support Niger in the coup, but that was not the entire Nigerians or the Nigerian government. It was the government, Tinubu and his friends. I can understand from that logic, but it was driven. There was an agenda that was growing in the ECOWAS. Also, Ghana was involved. I was very disappointed in that regard only. But other than that, I've seen Nigeria in many places taking side with South Africa. Even in the Palestine, Nigeria voted with South Africa. In many issues in Africa Union, Nigeria tend to support us. So look, sometimes we come against each other, but it's not like I'm ignorant to the certain positivity of what is Nigeria is doing. I'm very aware of the political space on the continent. But I do understand why Nigeria will tend to mind their business because they still want to grow economically. And looking at your geography, Nigeria can tend to do well business with the Western region compared to us. I mean, you have to look at geography as well. We can benefit from Asia and South America and even North America. You guys will benefit more with doing business with Europe and North America. And sometimes these things, they determine your ideology in politics. You have to feed your own people as well. You know, so yeah, that plays a role.
Lozi, let me play you this. This is the only time that I've ever been, and probably likely ever to be, proud of South Africa. So I want you to watch this. It's just about 2 minutes. But this is the only time that that I have ever been, probably almost likely ever to be proud of South Africa. Lozi, I want you to watch this.
Those of us who share your struggle for human rights and against apartheid have been somewhat disappointed by the models of human rights that you have held up since being released in jail. You've met over the last 6 months 3 times with Yasser Arafat. Are these your models of leaders of human rights? And if so, would you want a Gaddafi or an Arafat or a Castro to be a future president of South Africa?
One of the mistakes which some political analysts make is to think that their enemies should be our enemies.
Look, can I stop you 1 minute?
Our attitude towards any country is determined by the attitude of that country to our struggle.
1 minute, can I just stop you and say something? Because I know this video.
Do you want me to pause it?
Yeah, can you please pause
it? That for me, just from my personal limited views, is the proudest moment of. And South Africa has always had a long standing stance for standing for what they feel is right and just or wrong. So if you fast forward from this Mandela clip, which is from 10, 12 years ago, to now your stance for Palestine. So there's a consistency on standing on that balance of justice and equity?
Yeah, but look, South Africa has only soft power, and that's what we exercise for most part. Mandela was a politician, a career politician for most of his life. He did law as a young man, but Mandela was smart. He's my role model, as you can see. He's on my image, but the man was not perfect. What he was doing there was what politicians do. Politicians talk a big game. That's what they do. It sounds good. He said he was a principled man, especially when he appears on the national platforms. Many politicians are like that. What I believe in is countries like Yemen or Jordan who can try to have their military doing something. We don't have that power. We're not even based in Middle East. Here in Africa, we cannot even kick the West out of other African countries when they come. At the end of the day, I was talking about this 2 weeks ago. The only thing that matters in life is power. What Mandela says or not doesn't matter. The hegemony of America continued to expand. Even here in South Africa, we're dealing with the hegemony of America. They control most of our mining industries. They control most of our corporate trading route and all that, and in many other countries. So I respect the man for what he said, but words can only take you that far. At the end of the day, America continued to do what they had to do. I would like to see a new group of emerging leaders of Africa thinking like Putin.
Yeah, but Lozi, he only really offered the level of resistance that he could. The South Africa doesn't have the military might or the economic power to resist, but what they had was the capacity and the voice to express their disquiet. And that's what Mandela did there, and that is what you are doing now still with the Palestinian space.
You can see,
so what do you think of Julius Malema?
Yeah, that's why I suspect South Africa. You know, South Africa don't. South Africa know what the bridge to the Palestinian bill was wrong. Nigeria, in another small, Nigeria should know what the bridge to Nigeria was wrong, but Nigeria is not small. That's why I expect Palestinian. That's why I expect South Africa. The speaker wins white. May God bless South Africa speaking white in this issue.
Yeah, but you see, I mean, as I said earlier on, South Africa has got a soft power in many ways. So our regional position, the white people we have here as well, and our history. So there's certain things that do put us at our advantage, and the population as well. I mean, Nigeria's got a greater population. So in the near future, Nigeria, if it reaches its potential, it will benefit from its population, especially if it invests in the HDI. That means Human Development Index. So the more you increase education among your people, you will start to increase the manufacturing base. That's a matter of time. It depends on your current leadership if they choose wise in this, because the world is changing, to be honest. So it's the best time for your leaders to set up themselves for a better future. But you guys have got numbers. If you can invest in human resource, you will be fine. What I'm trying to say is that there's a limitation within your government at the moment. South Africa has got 60 million people with a fair population and infrastructure. I mean, with a better economy and infrastructure, with the population of the Western people here. So we cannot wake up tomorrow and they just start to bomb us. We live with their kids here. There's a lot of, and geographical, we also at a better space. We also control 2 oceans. So for us to have the position we have, to have the vote we have, there's a certain things that put us at a privilege. Are we playing a dangerous game? Yes. You know, the way we are going on with Israel, we are pushing America to a point where they're gonna have to prove some point. Well, I do respect our politicians for their stand. The most important thing I respect them for is us joining BRICS and being fundamental on our BRICS position. I think that's the best move they made. And if things go well, we will benefit in that regard. But if things don't go well, we are up for. America doesn't like us at all at the moment. I don't think they ever liked us, but today they don't like us most. But go ahead.
You see, I think the reason why some West African countries are scared, West African countries are scared of the West. They don't want to speak against them. They're scared. They're scared. That's why a lot of West African countries are scared to speak against the West. They're scared. That's what we mean.
Man, no, what you're doing there, you are applying a very easy. You are giving an easy answer to a complex situation. I tried to explain it. I don't know about other West African countries in that regard. Ghana, to my surprise, their president 1 minute is a Pan-African, the other minute is reporting other African countries that are liberating themselves from France to the White House. But I was talking about Nigeria. Nigeria's got a big population. That puts a Nigerian leadership more under pressure and more responsibility than countries like South Africa with a fair population and economy. You have to take that in consideration. You cannot ignore that. So if America sanctions South Africa and America sanctions Zimbabwe, I mean Nigeria is going to suffer more than South Africa. It's just the reality of it. So your leaders have to be very, very more cautious more than our leaders. I'm not saying sanctions won't affect us. They will. But Nigeria will suffer most just because looking at the numbers. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And so Nigeria cannot really afford to move a certain way, at least at the moment.
Yeah. That's one reason why I support Nigeria 100%. I support Nigeria doing 100%. Nigeria is saying to us, hey, you can't come to my country, put a mate and steal my resources. You can't do that. I support what Nigeria is doing. What other African country can do what Nigeria is doing? That would make Africa be the best continent in the world if we do that.
Look, I don't know about that. I think Nigeria, they took a good decision. Whether things are going to work out well tomorrow, I don't know. We should always be skeptical about these things. Most of these countries that are doing something now, including my own, that is as a member of BRICS, all these things depend if things really go according to the plan. There's many forces that can come and interrupt any plan we're trying to do in Africa. We have seen this throughout history. So I encourage Niger, Burkina Faso, and Mali for what they did. But I think we should always leave a room for disappointment and be very skeptical about the future. Just like how they removed the sanction in Zimbabwe. I'm happy for Zimbabwe. I wish Zimbabwe the best. Among even Nigeria itself, I wish you guys the best. But then we must always be cautious about when they said they removed the sanction, because I said earlier on, they removed certain sanctions, but they sanctioned the leadership of Zimbabwe. So, these people are always using something like when they said South Africa now is independent in 1994. It was as if we're going to nationalize all our mines, right? We were going to get all our land, our resources. No, it's always something comes and we always take 10 steps ahead and 10 steps backward. So we must always be very careful about these things. Many of these things are going to change if BRICS and other organizations are really going to shape the future of tomorrow. And that's if China and Russia don't turn against other small countries and want to be hegemonic, powerful countries. We can only hope for the best in the future.
All right, brilliant. But that targeting of sanctions towards the elite rather than the country itself, taking Zimbabwe out of the equation, I think that is a better use of sanctions, because often instances they will throw the sanction against the country, and then the ruling class will invoice that sanction to the general population, and they continue to live the lifestyle that they've always lived. So it doesn't, it rarely ever, if ever, impacts on in the manner that they had intended. But now, if they are micro targeting the sanctions towards the ruling class, and that is where the sanctions will be at its most potent.
Yeah, I mean that's a good point. Actually, I'm not well informed in that subject. I'm just coming from a basic knowledge of what I think it's happening. So you're raising a good point. I just don't know the damage when you sanction a leadership or the elites group in any society as compared to when maybe you sanction the entire country. My logic will agree with you, one man. I'll agree with you because I think it's common sense what you said. I think that's very logical. But I just don't know, man. I honestly don't know. But man, if Zimbabwe can thrive, man, to be honest, one man, we have got this issue where now we are seen as Africans who hate other Africans. Sometimes it's a pressure, man. If you can come to South Africa, if you lived here for all your life, you will see that there is an impact of large influx of group of people when they come at a one time. If people were coming slow and then maybe after 20 years you wake up with millions of many people, maybe you can handle that. But in a short space of time, you're gonna feel the tension like that. So for me, I look at it like this: if Zimbabwe thrive, it's good for South Africa. We can be good neighbors. We can go. Zimbabweans can come here. We can go to Zimbabwe. They can always trade with us as they do now. But I want that country to thrive, because when they thrive, we're going to thrive as well. So that's how I see it, man.
But the migration coming into South Africa is more from your neighboring countries than anything else. What's the largest migrant population in South Africa? Who constitutes the largest migrant population?
Okay, yeah, that's a good question, but I'm not going to give an easy answer. I will say this. First of all, we lost count on migration, and I think this was done deliberately through our government, and I think this the white corporates in South Africa, because they need the cheap labor. So they made sure that they probably make the border very penetrative, like easy to come to South Africa. So we lost a count of people, or at least that's what I hear from people who are here. They say it's easy. I've never been at our border. The other thing I'll say is this: I'm more exposed to our fellow Africans, looking at like just what is the demographic. I'm black. I live among more black people, and if I'm in a city, our cities are full of black people to begin with, all our major cities. So it's probably in the suburbs where you start to see other races, or small towns. So I would say it can look like we've got more of our continental migrants, mostly being Zimbabweans, Malawians, Mozambicans. I think at the top is Zimbabweans, Mozambicans, Malawi. I will say Lesotho, probably between Zambia and Botswana. And then now you start to move to Congo and Angola. Then you're going to have to take in Ethiopia and Somalia, Nigeria, Ghana. And then you start to see everyone. You see people from Senegal, Egypt, Morocco, Middle East. Then you start to see Pakistanis, Bangladesh, and many more Indians. And then you start, Cape Town is full of the Europeans. Not so long ago, I think last week, there was trending news. They said probably about more than 1 million of illegal Europeans are living in Cape Town. They actually trying to make Cape Town their own country. So that's another big problem we're sitting with. And I think black people should be very careful in this country about that issue down there. Yeah. So yeah, that's. I hope I hope what I'm saying is true. But that's how I see it.
You did, But the way Nigerians are flashed up in South Africa, in the South African narrative all the time, you would think that they are threatening the demography in terms of outcompeting the indigenous blacks. But I've always been of the thought that the largest migrants into South Africa will have to be their neighbors, because it has a bigger economy than them, and they are economic migrants wanting to come over for a better life.
Yeah, but look, it's like this. In South Africa is that country in Africa where you are likely to find everyone. The numbers do differ in terms of how many in nationalities. The difference is if I come to West Africa, I'm likely to meet other West Africans from neighboring countries and other Africans from other countries, but not as compared to South Africa. Similar to East Africa, if I'm in Kenya, for example, I'm likely to meet foreigners, but mostly will be black or across the continent. The problem with South Africa is that it's a magnet for everyone, one man. And let me be honest on the issue of Nigerians, and you need to take this with a pinch of salt, because I'm going to be honest with you. I don't want to be diplomatic. Nigerians are not the biggest migrants in South Africa. I don't even think they close. The problem is that most of them tend to not do good things. And sometimes when we talk with Nigerians, is that they say it's a specific tribe. Well, I don't know about that, because in South Africa, they will just be seen as Nigerians. And the other problem is that other West Africans, when South Africans see even other West Africans, if it's not confirmed on nationality, they will just assume that person is a Nigerian. So that also put Nigerians under pressure, and it's not fair. And the other thing as well is there's a narrative as well. As much as you guys there believe that we are xenophobic, even although we sit with the largest migrants, but you still want to believe that. There's people here who will believe that Nigerians are just up to no good when they see a Nigerian because of that narrative. So it's up to us to not argue all the time and try to see, when I engage with you, maybe if you really want us to trade well and be good partners in Africa as Africans, I have to put myself in your shoes, and you have to put yourself in my shoes. The biggest thing is that South Africans, at the end of the day, they feel entitled to their country, and they are in their country, so they will speak the most about what is happening in their country. What you can do yourself, even your people living in South African countries, is at least try to be at a level where we understand each other, tolerate us, try to talk with us, understand why things are like that. I think it can also come as if it's not fair, because it's as if black South Africans are picking on blacks, while we have got whites here who are also still coming in millions in even in Western Cape Town. I think that can be explained. If you look at economy and you also look at power, white people are powerful. Of course, it's easy to target a black man and point a finger saying, you know what, you are a foreigner, leave my country. First of all, we don't even look at white people as if they can be illegal in our country. We always assume, okay, it's just another white South African, because they've got money. They don't live in poor communities. You're never gonna see white people, especially the migrants from Europe. They don't live in poor communities. Most of them are in Cape Town. Cape Town is full of rich people. Most white people, they are not even white from South Africa. So it's international billionaires. So how can a poor person from a township go start to think a white person in Cape Town was a billionaire and illegal migrant? You know, so you have to understand that people are gonna react to what they see every day. They're not gonna react to what they don't see. So black South Africans have got more access to other fellow black Africans, because even black Africans, when they come to South Africa, they tend to live in black neighborhoods. I just hope I make sure, I make sense for you to understand.
So who got more power, the blacks or the whites in South Africa? Who got more power?
Power.
Yeah.
No, most powerful people in South Africa are white people, man. It's not even, we cannot even compare. And they are powerful because they've got the entire West behind them. You get what I'm saying? I mean, it's not even, you can't even compare, man. Well, it will look like we have got a political power, right? They've got economical power and even political power. I think they just allow us to have that because we can only do so much with it. They know that as long as the West is behind them, the West can influence the black political group. So it's a double-edged sword, man. It's a double-edged sword.
All right. Let me send this link into the comment section. Kaizo is running another stream, which is ongoing concurrently with this one. So join Kaizo here. So Kaizo is running another stream, which is running concurrently with this one. So I have to head off, go do some things. So
let's close this one.
Yeah, so let me send that link. So anybody that wants the conversation to carry on, just click on that link, go join Kaizo on that space. So it's running a very interesting topic as we speak. But thank you, everyone. Let's have the final word from Lozi, and then we wrap it up. Lozi, the final word.
Yeah, look, man, if we listen to each other more, we'll understand each other. But I'm not joining Kaizo's channel, man. I'm just tired for now. But peace, man. Good conversation.
All right, cheers. Goodbye, everyone. Click on that link. Go join Kaizo in the second stream.